I should never have married an old woman like you. Younger women are so much better. I can't even walk with you in public, you embarrass me. If I could, I'd go back and start my life over. These are the words my ex-husband, Tom, said to me 10 years ago. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm 48 years old. I married Tom when I was 33, and he was 5 years younger than me. I was a nurse, and we met at the hospital where I worked. Tom had just finished his residency and joined the hospital as a new doctor. He often asked me for help, and I found his innocence charming, so I supported him. Even though I was 5 years older and a nurse while he was a doctor, we eventually started dating because he kept talking to me every day, and I couldn't ignore him. After 2 years of dating, we got married. I was a little worried about the age difference, but Tom didn't seem to care, so I stopped worrying too. However, after 5 years of marriage, he began to insult me daily, saying he should have married someone younger. He would chat happily with younger nurses at the hospital, but I tried to ignore it since we were at work, and I didn't want to cause a scene. Then, one day, I found out Tom had been cheating on me. The other woman was a former patient, but I didn't know her because I worked in a different department. She was 10 years younger than me. Tom laughed and said, "It's no wonder we didn't have kids with someone old like you. My girlfriend is pregnant with my child." I couldn't stand to be with someone like Tom anymore, so I agreed to the divorce. I told him and his girlfriend that I would be asking for alimony, financial support. Tom got furious. "I was married to an old woman like you for 5 years, and you want alimony? I should be the one getting paid," he shouted. He didn't expect me to ask for money after his affair. Even Tom's father called me, saying it was normal for young men to be attracted to younger women. I was shocked. Tom refused to pay, so I had no choice but to get a lawyer. I couldn't just stay quiet after everything he did and said. The lawyer told me I had the right to ask for alimony, so I let them handle everything. I had heard that getting divorced is harder than getting married, and I truly felt that way. Thanks to the lawyer, I was able to move forward. I was able to get the alimony I deserved, end the lease on our shared apartment, and start living on my own. I also changed my last name from Evans back to my maiden name, Britton. The only good thing was that Tom switched to a new hospital. As his last remark, he said, "I wouldn't want to be stuck with a greedy old hag like you." He probably thought divorcing me for his mistress would upset people, but I was surprised he was already so prepared, with a new job lined up. Still, people talk. I couldn't escape the whispers about how I was dumped by my younger husband, and I felt like everyone was judging me. It made me paranoid, and the stress became too much. Eventually, I quit my job at the hospital. I spent some time feeling lost, but since I love working, I decided to find a new job. Luckily, I found a small maternity clinic nearby that was hiring nurses, and I got the job right away. It was a small, friendly place, with only a few doctors and nurses, but we all got along well. The patients and staff were kind, and my life started to feel peaceful again. My coworkers would say, "Miss Britton, you're so observant, and the patients really like you. We're lucky to have you." But my calm days didn't last. One day, a pregnant woman was referred to the clinic from another hospital. Her name was Sarah Evans, the same name as Tom's mistress. I checked, and sure enough, her husband was Tom Evans, a doctor. My ex-husband, Tom's hospital didn't have an obstetrics department, and they had just moved nearby, so they were referred to our clinic. Since I had changed back to my maiden name, Sarah didn't recognize me, and we had never met face to face. I couldn't believe I was running into them here, but I kept quiet. A few days later, Tom came to the clinic with his wife for her checkup. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. He hadn't expected to see me. I didn't want to see him either. "What are you doing here?" he asked, and his wife quickly realized who I was. She snapped, "Did you come here just to bother us?" I calmly replied, "Of course not. I work here. I had no idea you lived nearby." But Tom wouldn't listen and accused me of following them. "You're stalking us, aren't you? Trying to harass me?" "Don't be ridiculous," I said. "Why would I do that? You're just a greedy woman who squeezed money out of me after I left you for being old. Who knows what you'll do next?" he shouted. He said all of this in the examination room, and everyone heard. Now, everyone knew about my past with Tom, and I felt all their eyes on me. Even though I knew Tom was wrong, it was hard to face the situation. I felt really uncomfortable. "I'm scared. I feel like she's looking at me with bad intentions. What if something happens to my baby?" Tom's wife added to the drama, fake tears in her eyes. Tom then said firmly, "I don't know what she's capable of, so please keep her away from my wife." The doctor in charge asked me to leave the room. It wasn't because they suspected me, but it seemed like the only way to calm things down was for me to step out. I understood that patients come first, and I didn't want to stay either, but it still made me feel terrible. I started feeling uncomfortable around everyone, especially since I didn't want people to know the details of my divorce. To make things worse, Tom's wife kept coming back to the hospital and badmouthing me each time, although everyone knew I wasn't at fault. No one said anything because she was a pregnant patient and needed to be taken care of. They didn't want to stress her out or interfere in personal matters. This made things even harder for me, and I dreaded staying in that atmosphere. With more than 6 months until her due date, I couldn't imagine working there for that long under these conditions. Even though it was a good job, I decided to resign. The director seemed relieved, saying, "It's a shame, but there's nothing we can do." I felt like I was being punished even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Exhausted from everything, I didn't have the energy to look for a new hospital job, so I went back to my parents' home in the countryside. They welcomed me without asking questions. At first, I couldn't bring myself to do anything, but I soon felt guilty for just staying at home. So, I took a part-time job at a local supermarket. It was my first time working outside of a hospital, but it felt refreshing and gave me a much-needed change of pace. I loved being a nurse, but it came with the huge responsibility of caring for people's lives. There wasn't a single day I could relax. Being away from that pressure felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. 3 years after moving back home, the supermarket offered me a full-time position. My hard work had been noticed, and I was happy to accept the offer. 4 years later, a matchmaker approached me and asked, "Would you consider an arranged marriage?" Surprised, I said, "Excuse me?" The store manager, who suggested it, said, "I have the perfect person for you," but at 45, I had no plans of remarrying, so I politely declined. Still, the manager kept insisting. The other person was a 47-year-old divorcee like me, also divorced because of a cheating spouse. It happened to him 20 years ago. In the end, I couldn't say no to the meeting, and we agreed to meet in person, without any middleman. When I arrived at the restaurant, he was already there. As I walked in, he quickly stood up and bowed deeply but accidentally hit his forehead on the table. Ouch! His face turned red, and I couldn't help but laugh. It felt like something straight out of a comedy. "Hi, I'm James. Thank you for coming today," he said. "Nice to meet you, I'm Elizabeth," I replied. Thanks to his funny little accident, we quickly felt comfortable with each other. As we talked, he told me that he had asked for this arranged meeting because he fell in love with me at first sight when he visited our supermarket during a business trip. It turned out the store manager was his old college senior, and he helped set up the meeting. "I'd like to have a serious relationship, if possible," he said. I had planned to refuse, but somehow I couldn't say those words. Instead, I found myself wanting to see him again. After dating for 6 months, we decided to get married. Both my parents liked him and were genuinely happy for us. Living with my husband, who always thought of me first, was a true blessing. Since we were both older, we didn't plan on having kids. We just wanted to enjoy a peaceful life together, hand in hand. However, when I turned 48, my health started to decline. I went to the hospital for a checkup, thinking I was sick, but the doctor told me I wasn't just ill, I was pregnant. I never imagined getting pregnant at this age, and I had assumed my symptoms were something else, not morning sickness. I think my husband was just as shocked. When I told him, "It seems like there's a baby," he responded naturally, "That's great. So, who's the lucky one? Do I know them?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, you know them very well, they're right in front of you." "What? I'm the one who's pregnant," I added. My husband looked confused and stayed quiet for a moment. I thought to myself. The man I was set to meet was a 47-year-old divorcee, just like me. He had gone through a divorce because his spouse had cheated on him, which happened 20 years ago. In the end, I couldn't say no, and we agreed to meet directly, without using any go-between. When I arrived at the restaurant, he was already there. As I walked in, he quickly stood up and bowed, but accidentally hit his forehead on the table. Ouch! His face turned red, and I couldn't help but laugh. It was like something out of a comedy. "Hi, I'm James. Thank you for coming today," he said awkwardly. "Nice to meet you, I'm Elizabeth," I replied, still smiling. That little accident broke the ice, and we soon felt comfortable with each other. As we talked, I found out that this meeting happened because James had fallen in love with me at first sight when he visited the supermarket where I worked during a business trip. He had asked his old college friend, who was the store manager, to set up the meeting. "I'd like to have a serious relationship, if possible," he said. I had come with the idea of turning him down, but I couldn't bring myself to say no. Instead, I found myself wanting to see him again. After dating for 6 months, we decided to get married. My parents really liked him, and they were happy for us. Living with James, who always thought of me and cared for me, was a true blessing. Since we were both older, we didn't plan to have children. We just wanted to live a peaceful life together. But when I turned 48, my health started to get worse. I went to the hospital for a checkup, thinking I was sick, but to my surprise, I found out I was pregnant. I never thought I would get pregnant at this age, and I didn't realize my illness was actually morning sickness. I think my husband was just as shocked. When I told him, "It seems like there's a baby," he smiled and said, "That's great. So, who's the lucky one? Do I know them?" I laughed and said, "Yes, you know them very well. They're standing right in front of you." "What? I'm the one who's pregnant," I explained. My husband looked confused and stayed quiet for a moment, clearly trying to process the news. "Since you're new to our hospital, you might not know, but I don't have any connection to you." "Even so, what you just said was terrible, Mrs. Miles pointed out. "I can't believe a doctor would say something like that." Just then, my husband arrived. "Sorry I'm late. My wife has been a great help to you," he said, noticing I was upset. Tom, looking pale, sensed something was wrong. "Is something wrong?" my husband asked. "I was just told by this man, Dr. Evans, that giving birth at 48 is disgusting," I explained. Hearing this, my usually calm husband's face changed instantly. He realized this was the same Dr. Evans, my ex-husband, that I had told him about. He knew Tom's name and occupation. "Are you Dr. Evans? Did you insult my wife?" my husband asked. Well that's..." Tom stammered. "What kind of hospital is this, where a doctor insults a patient? I can't trust my wife and unborn child to a place like this," my husband exclaimed. Just then, the nurse returned with the director. "I heard there was some rudeness," said the director. "My father recommended this hospital, but I can't believe a doctor like this works here. It seems we chose the wrong hospital," my husband said angrily. The director apologized. "I'm terribly sorry, that's not true. This man is not our doctor. I just fired him." "What?" Tom exclaimed. "I didn't know he was like this. I only hired him because a friend asked me to. We don't need a doctor who talks like that. He won't be here again," the director said firmly. Tom tried to protest, but the director silenced him. "Shut up and leave. Don't come near our hospital again." Tom was dragged out by another doctor, still shouting. The director apologized so much that we felt bad for him. We calmed down and sat back down, but my husband was still angry. "Did you fire him because my father donated to this hospital? If not, would you have let him stay?" The director shook his head. He explained that Tom had only been at the hospital for a week. Tom's father, who was an old classmate of the director, had begged him to give Tom a job. The director had no idea Tom would act like this and apologized again. "It's not like all the doctors here are like Tom. In fact, the obstetrician here is very good. If Tom wasn't around, I'd be happy to have the baby here," I said. My husband agreed. A few days later, Tom contacted us, begging for help. "Could you talk to the director and get me rehired? If you ask, they might reconsider," he pleaded. Apparently, Tom had been fired from many hospitals due to his bad attitude, and his father had warned him this was his last chance. My husband took the phone and told Tom that if he ever contacted us again, he would report him for harassment. After that, Tom never called again. Later, on the way home from the hospital, we saw Tom working at a convenience store. It seemed no hospital would hire him anymore. He told us his wife and child had left him, but I didn't feel any sympathy. We decided not to go to that convenience store again. The following year, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She is adorable, and no matter what, I'm determined to raise her with love and care. My husband has been smitten with her since the day she was born, and I have to make sure he doesn't spoil her too much.
The sickly sweet scent of disinfectant couldn't mask the tension hanging in the hospital corridor. I lingered outside room 342, my hand frozen on the medication cart, as my husband's voice drifted through the partially open door. "Everything's arranged. She won't suspect a thing until it's too late." My name is Eliana, and after 19 years of marriage, I'd never heard that tone in Ronald's voice before. Calculated, cold, almost predatory. The transfer should be complete by Friday, he continued. Once the paperwork's filed, she'll have no legal recourse. Trust me, I've covered every angle. The cart's wheels squeaked as I shifted my weight. My hands trembled as I pretended to reorganize supplies, straining to catch every word. A patient call light flashed at the end of the hall, but for the first time in my 15 years as a nurse, I ignored it. Martha's divorce left her vulnerable. Perfect timing, really. And Marie, well, teenagers are easy to manipulate when they're angry at their parents. My sister and my daughter. The two people I'd been desperately trying to protect since Martha's marriage imploded 6 months ago. The medication vials clinked as my fingers tightened around the cart handle. Mother's already on board. She doesn't know the details, but she'll back my play. She always does. Of course my mother would side with Ronald. She'd worshipped him since the day he'd walked into our lives, the successful businessman who'd swept her eldest daughter off her feet. If she only knew what I'd discovered in the past few weeks. The missing funds from our joint accounts, the secret meetings, the whispered phone calls. Austin's keeping Marie distracted. Smart kid, knows exactly what to say to keep her mind off what's happening at home, worth every penny I'm paying him. My daughter's tutor, the charming young man I'd trusted to help with her college preparations. The betrayal burned in my throat like acid. Footsteps approached the door. I pushed the cart forward, trying to appear busy as Ronald emerged, phone still pressed to his ear. He paused when he saw me, his practiced smile sliding into place. "Gotta go," he said into the phone. "Important meeting." He ended the call, tucking the phone into his suit pocket. "Sweetheart, what are you doing on this floor? I thought you worked in pediatrics." "Covering a shift for Marvin," I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "His mother's in hospice?" Always the helpful one. He kissed my cheek, his cologne overwhelming. "Don't work too late. Marie's making dinner tonight." I watched him stride away, his expensive shoes clicking against the linoleum. My daughter cooking dinner? Marie hadn't set foot in our kitchen since she'd started spending time with Austin 3 months ago. The call light was still blinking. I pushed the cart toward it, my mind racing. Whatever Ronald was planning, he'd wrapped our entire family into his scheme. My sister, my daughter, my mother. Even Marie's tutor was involved. In the supply closet, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the one person I could still trust. "Marvin, I need your help." My voice cracked. "Remember when you said something felt off about Ronald's investment proposal for the hospital pension fund? I think I just found out why." The line went quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" he finally asked. "Access to the hospital's financial records. And—" I hesitated, knowing this request would change everything. "I need you to help me destroy my husband before he destroys our family." Another pause. "Come to my office after your shift. Bring everything you've found so far." I ended the call and leaned against the metal shelving, my heart pounding. The game Ronald was playing had rules I didn't understand yet, but I was done being a pawn. It was time to become a player. The call light blinked again, more urgent now. I straightened my scrubs and took a deep breath. First, I had patients to care for. Then, I had a family to save. The financial records spread across Marvin's desk told a story of calculated deception. Each transaction, each transfer painted a clearer picture of Ronald's scheme. But it was my sister's text that made my blood run cold. "Marie's not at my place," Martha wrote. "She said she was staying with me tonight." I gripped the edge of Marvin's desk. "I need to go." "Wait." Marvin's hand hovered over a document. "Look at these timestamps. The transfers to Austin's account started 3 months ago, right when Marie's grades began slipping." The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. That's when I hired him as her tutor. $2,000, weekly payments. Marvin tapped the screen. "That's not tutoring money." My phone buzzed again. Martha. "Found her. She's at that new cafe on 5th with Austin." "Keep watching them," I texted back. "I'm on my way." The cafe was packed with evening customers when I arrived. Through the window, I spotted my sister hunched in a corner booth, pretending to read a magazine. 3 tables away, Marie sat with Austin, her face animated as she gestured with her hands. The same way I used to at her age, when everything felt possible and adults were just obstacles to be overcome. "She's been here an hour," Martha whispered as I slid into her booth. "He keeps showing her something on his phone. She looks excited." I studied Austin's body language, the calculated way he leaned forward, how his eyes darted to the door every few minutes. "Has Ronald called?" "Twice. I covered for her." Martha's fingers drummed against her coffee cup. "Eliana, there's something else. Elijah called me this morning." The mention of her ex-husband's name made me turn. "What did he want?" He asked about Ronald, specific questions about his business practices, his partners. She lowered her voice. He said he's been investigating him for months, that Ronald's involved in something bigger than we realize. At Marie's table, Austin stood suddenly, heading toward the restroom. His phone lay face up on the table. "Watch my purse," I said, standing. "Eliana, don't—" But I was already moving, timing my path to intersect with Marie's table. My daughter's eyes widened as I approached. "Mom, what are you—" I snatched Austin's phone, my fingers flying over the screen before it could lock. Messages, recent calls, photos. "Hey!" Austin's voice cut through the cafe chatter. "What do you think you're doing?" The last opened message thread caught my eye, from Ronald. "Keep her occupied, whatever it takes." Marie grabbed for the phone. "Mom, stop it! You're embarrassing me!" I held the device out of reach, scrolling frantically. More messages appeared. Dates, times, instructions. A photo of bank documents. My signature forged. Austin reached us, his charm replaced by something harder. "Mrs. Eliana, that's private property." "Like the property you're helping my husband steal?" The words came out sharp enough to draw stares from nearby tables. The tutoring was just a cover, wasn't it? What's he paying you to manipulate my daughter? Marie stood so quickly her chair toppled. "He's not manipulating me. Austin's the only one who actually listens to me, who treats me like an adult." Marie. But she was already pushing past me, tears streaming down her face. Austin moved to follow her. I grabbed his arm. "Touch my daughter again, and I'll make sure every college in the state knows what kind of tutor you really are." His mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "Careful, Eliana. You don't want to make an enemy of your husband's friends." Martha appeared at my side as Austin retrieved his phone and left. Marie took off toward the bus stop. "Want me to follow her?" I shook my head, watching my daughter's retreating figure through the window. "She'll go home. She has to keep up appearances for Ronald." "What are you going to do?" The cafe's overhead lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the empty table where my daughter had sat, plotting with my enemies. "I'm going to talk to Elijah. If he's been investigating Ronald, he must have found something we can use." "Be careful," Martha warned. "Elijah's not exactly stable since the divorce." "Neither am I." I gathered my purse, my mind already racing ahead to the next move in this dangerous game. Not anymore. The hospital's administrative files filled Marvin's computer screen, each document more damning than the last. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. Pension funds diverted, investment accounts drained, employee savings vanished into shell companies. "Ronald's been systematically stealing from the hospital for years," Marvin said, his voice tight. "But here's where it gets worse." He pulled up another document. "Your signature's on half these authorizations." "That's impossible. I know you didn't, but someone did." He pointed to a date. "This one was signed while you were in surgery with that trauma case last month, remember? The 6-hour procedure?" The room seemed to tilt sideways. "He's setting me up to take the fall." "There's more," Marvin hesitated. "The board's launching an investigation. Your name's already been flagged." A knock at the office door made us both jump. The handle turned before we could respond, and my mother's caregiver stepped in. "Jason?" I straightened. "What are you doing here?" "Your mother sent me." His usually calm face was etched with concern. "She needs you at the house, now." "I can't just—" "Ronald's there," he cut in, "with Marie." The drive to my mother's house was a blur. Jason's car weaved through traffic as he spoke in low tones. "They arrived an hour ago. Ronald was agitated, started talking about moving assets, protecting the family. Your mother seemed confused, but she kept agreeing with everything he said." "And Marie?" "Silent, wouldn't look at anyone." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "There's something else. A man showed up just before I left, said his name was Elijah. Martha's ex-husband." My chest tightened. "What did he want?" "Don't know. Your mother wouldn't let him in, but he said he'd wait." The scene at the house was worse than I'd imagined. Elijah stood in the driveway, arguing with my mother. Ronald's voice boomed from inside. Marie sat on the front steps, her face buried in her phone. "You have no right to be here," my mother shouted at Elijah. "Haven't you caused enough damage?" "Show her the papers," Elijah called when he saw me. "Show her what her precious son-in-law's been doing with her foundation's money." Ronald appeared in the doorway. "Eliana, don't listen to him. He's trying to destroy our family." "Like you destroyed mine?" Elijah advanced. "Tell them how you really made your fortune. Tell them about the families you bankrupted." "Mom?" Marie's voice cracked. "What's happening?" I moved toward my daughter, but Ronald got there first. Go inside, sweetheart. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerns her, I said, including what you're paying Austin to do. The color drained from Ronald's face. Behind him, my mother gasped. You're all being manipulated, Ronald recovered quickly. Elijah's bitter about his divorce. He's turning you against me. The offshore accounts, Elijah interrupted. The forged documents, the missing pension funds. Should I keep going? Marie stood suddenly. Austin said you were helping him start a business. That's what the money was for. Marie, Ronald reached for her. Don't touch her. The words came out like ice. Don't you dare touch our daughter. Silence fell. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Show them, Elijah pressed. Show them what I found. I pulled out my phone, opened the files Marvin had sent. Mother, look at these. Really look. But my mother backed away. I don't want to see anything he's given you. Ronald's protected this family. He's been stealing from you for years, Jason spoke up. Everyone turned. He stepped forward, pulled an envelope from his jacket. I've been watching, documenting everything. The late-night calls, the mysterious visitors, the papers he makes you sign without reading. Ronald's mask cracked. For just a moment, I saw the truth. The desperation, the fury, the fear. Marie, I said softly, check your phone, the last message from Austin. She did. Her face crumpled as she read. I trusted you, she whispered to Ronald. Then she ran inside. This isn't over, Ronald snarled, but his eyes darted between faces, calculating odds, measuring loyalty. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. The front door slammed as Elijah stepped closer, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Should I tell them about Singapore, or shall you? Ronald's face went ash gray. Whatever Singapore meant, it was the key to everything. And suddenly I knew, this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about survival. The Singapore files lay scattered across Elijah's kitchen table like pieces of a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different angle of Ronald's deception. 3 companies dissolved overnight, Elijah said, tapping a document. 48 employees left without severance. 1 man lost everything, his house, his savings. 2 weeks later, he drove his car off a bridge. My throat tightened. And Ronald? Walked away with millions, the same pattern he's using now with the hospital pension fund. He slid another paper forward. But here's what makes it personal. Martha's trust fund was part of that deal. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, rain peppered the windows, distorting the streetlights. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because Ronald's about to do it again, but this time... Elijah's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. Your mother's called an emergency family meeting, tonight. My own phone lit up with the message. Dinner at 7, attendance mandatory, my mother's way of maintaining the illusion of control. She's choosing sides, I said. She already has. Elijah gathered the papers. Ronald's convinced her to transfer her estate into a new trust, one he controls. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the rain-streaked glass, I recognized Jason's silhouette. Your mother sent me to fetch you, he said when I opened the door. His eyes darted to Elijah, then back to me. But there's something you need to know first. He pulled out his phone, played a recording. My mother's voice, thin with anxiety. The Singapore deal wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. Ronald promised. When was this? I demanded. Last night. She talks in her sleep sometimes, mentions dates, names. Jason lowered his voice. She knew about Singapore before it happened. She helped Ronald set it up. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My own mother, complicit in destroying lives, including her younger daughter's future. There's more, Jason continued. Austin visited her yesterday morning. They talked about Marie's college fund. My hands curled into fists. She wouldn't dare. She already has. Elijah held up another document. The transfer was completed this morning. Ronald now controls every penny of Marie's education money. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. The tutoring, the late-night meetings, Austin's manipulation. It was all about isolating Marie, ensuring she'd side with Ronald when everything fell apart. My phone buzzed again. Martha. Marie's missing. Austin's not answering his phone. The world tilted sideways. I steadied myself against the door frame. I know where they'll be, Elijah said, grabbing his keys. The same place Ronald took his victims in Singapore. Somewhere public, somewhere they can't make a scene while he explains how this is all for their own good. The drive to the art museum was tense with unspoken fears. We found them in the East Wing. Ronald, my mother, Austin, and Marie. My daughter's face was streaked with tears as Ronald gestured at something on his tablet. Just sign here, sweetheart, he was saying. It's the only way to protect your future. The only thing she needs protection from is you. My voice carried across the empty gallery. Ronald's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing raw fury before smoothing into concern. Eliana, you're not thinking clearly. Tell her, Gabrielle. Tell her how we're trying to help. My mother stepped forward, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. Sometimes love means making difficult choices. Like Singapore? The words hit their mark. My mother stumbled back. Jason recorded everything, Mother, every guilty whisper, every confession. Marie looked between us, confusion turning to understanding. What's Singapore? Ask your grandmother, Elijah said quietly. Ask her about the man who died because of their difficult choices. Austin moved toward Marie, but I was faster. Touch her, and every recording, every document goes public. Your promising future ends right here. Marie, Ronald tried one last time. You know I only want what's best. What you want, I cut in, is control. But it's over. The hospital board knows everything. The police will too once they see what Elijah found. The tablet slipped from Ronald's hands, clattering on the marble floor. In the shattered screen, I caught my reflection and saw something I hadn't noticed before. I was smiling. The dining room in my mother's house felt like a stage set for a Greek tragedy. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, throwing prismatic shadows across faces that had become unrecognizable to me. Ronald sat at the head of the table, my mother to his right, both wearing expressions of practiced concern. You're being unreasonable, my mother said, cutting her meat with precise movements. Ronald has always protected this family. Marie pushed her food around her plate. The bruise on her wrist, from when she'd fallen earlier that afternoon, was darkening to purple. An accident that happened moments after she'd tried to tell me something about Austin. Protection shouldn't leave bruises, I said. Ronald's fork clinked against his plate. That was unfortunate, but if she hadn't been running— From what? Martha interrupted. What exactly was my niece running from? The air crackled with tension. Jason moved silently around the table, refilling water glasses, his presence a reminder of everything he'd overheard. Marie, Ronald's voice softened dangerously. Why don't you tell them about the scholarship opportunity Austin found for you, the one in Singapore? My daughter's face went pale. I haven't decided. It's already arranged, my mother cut in. The paperwork just needs signatures. The room tilted sideways. Singapore. Always Singapore. She's 17, I said. She can't leave the country without my consent. Actually, Ronald pulled out a folder, as her legal guardian. What did you say? The papers you signed last month for Marie's college fund? He smiled. They included a transfer of guardianship. Temporary, of course, just until she turns 18. Martha's glass shattered in her grip, blood mixed with water on the white tablecloth. You forged those papers, I whispered. Prove it. Ronald's mask slipped, revealing something reptilian beneath. Your signatures on everything. The hospital transfers, the trust documents, even the Singapore arrangements. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected businessman or the unstable nurse who's been making wild accusations? Tell them, Marie suddenly burst out, tell them what Austin really— The crash came from behind me. I turned to see Jason sprawled on the floor, a serving tray overturned beside him. Marie screamed. He's having a seizure, my mother cried. But I'd seen seizures. This wasn't one. Jason's eyes found mine as he convulsed, trying to form words. Call an ambulance! Martha grabbed her phone. No! Ronald stood. I'll take him. My car's faster. Don't! Jason gasped. The drink— Understanding hit like a thunderbolt. I lunged for Marie's untouched water glass, but Ronald was faster. It shattered against the wall. Mother, I said quietly, what did you let him do? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Sometimes sacrifices— Sacrifices? Martha's voice rose hysterically. Like Singapore? Like that man who died? Marie stood so quickly her chair toppled. What man? What are you talking about? Your grandfather, Jason managed, his breathing labored. Tell her about her grandfather. The color drained from my mother's face. Ronald moved toward Jason, but Marvin, who'd been silent until now, blocked his path. The ambulance is coming, Martha said, and the police. You've lost control, I told Ronald, of everything. His laugh was hollow. Have I? Marie's still legally under my guardianship. The hospital board still has evidence of your fraud. And now a tragic accident at a family dinner. He glanced at Jason. Stress can do terrible things to people. Marie, I said, not taking my eyes off Ronald. Get your things. You're leaving with Martha. She's not going anywhere. Ronald's hand closed around Marie's arm. Tell them, sweetheart. Tell them how happy you are about Singapore. My daughter looked at me, then at the bruise on her wrist, then at Jason still gasping on the floor. Something shifted in her eyes. You're right, she said quietly. I should tell them everything. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ronald's grip tightened. I should tell them about the recordings, Marie continued. The ones Austin didn't know I was making. Every meeting, every threat, every promise about Singapore. She pulled out her phone. Should we play them now? The look on Ronald's face made me realize he wasn't the only one who could orchestrate a staged catastrophe. The hospital's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as I watched Jason fight for his life through the ICU window. The doctors had confirmed what I already knew, targeted poisoning, carefully dosed to look like natural causes. He's stabilized, Marvin said, joining me, but the police want to know why you delayed calling the ambulance. My hands curled into fists. They think I was involved? Ronald's been talking to them, suggesting things. He hesitated. The board suspended you pending investigation. A nurse I'd worked with for 10 years walked past, averting her eyes. My reputation, my career, everything I'd built, dissolving like sugar in rain. My phone buzzed. Martha. Marie's gone. The world tilted sideways. What? She went to get her laptop from the house. Austin was waiting. They left together 20 minutes ago. The memory of Marie's bruised wrist flashed through my mind. Track her phone. Already tried. It's off. But Elijah says he knows where Austin takes his targets. Some warehouse by the industrial park. Don't move. I'm coming. But as I turned to leave, 2 police detectives blocked my path. Mrs. Eliana, the older one said, we need to discuss the incident at your mother's house and some concerning financial transactions. My daughter's missing. We know. Your husband's already filed a report. Claims you've been unstable, making threats. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Through the ICU window, Jason's monitors beeped steadily, each sound a reminder of how Ronald had nearly killed him to keep him quiet. Check his water glass, I said. From the dinner. Check Jason's blood work. You'll find... The evidence has been contaminated, the younger detective cut in. Your mother's housekeeper already cleaned everything up, on Ronald's instructions. Of course she had. Ronald never left loose ends. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The message contained one image, a photograph I'd never seen before. My mother, 20 years younger, standing beside a man I recognized from the Singapore files. The man who'd died. Below it, text appeared. Ask your mother who really killed your father. The timestamp showed it came from Marie's phone. I need to go, I told the detectives. Now. If you leave the hospital, we'll have to... Marvin stepped between us. I'm invoking medical privacy laws. This conversation is over until her lawyer arrives. They're taking Marie to Singapore, I said once we were alone. Ronald's recreating his old pattern. But this time... I showed him the photo. His face went gray. Your father's car accident. It wasn't... An accident? Apparently not. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. That's why my mother always supported Ronald. He helped her hide something. Where are you going? To the warehouse. Martha and Elijah are meeting me. The police will follow you. Let them. I touched the ICU glass one last time. Jason risked everything to protect Marie. I won't let that be for nothing. But in the parking lot, my mother waited beside my car. You can't stop this, she said. Some secrets have to stay buried. Like what really happened to my father? She flinched. You don't understand. I understand that you and Ronald murdered my father. That you've been helping him destroy lives ever since. That now you're helping him take my daughter. To protect her, Singapore is safe, far from all this mess you're creating. The last time Ronald sent someone to Singapore, they died. Your father was weak. He would have ruined everything, just like you're trying to do now. She pulled out her phone. One call, and those detectives arrest you. Marie goes to Singapore with Austin, clean slate. And if I back off? Then maybe we can discuss arrangements, supervised visits once she's settled. The hospital lights cast my mother's shadow long and dark across the pavement. In it, I saw every lie, every manipulation, every moment she'd chosen Ronald's schemes over her own children. You know what's funny? I said quietly. I actually recorded that entire conversation. Just like Marie recorded Austin. I guess it runs in the family. Her face contorted. She reached for her phone, but I was already moving. Behind her, Marvin appeared with the detectives. "I'll tell them everything," she hissed as they approached. "Good." I got into my car. "Start with Singapore. I'm sure they'd love to hear about my father's accident." In the rearview mirror, I watched them lead her away. One betrayal exposed. But Marie was still out there, and time was running out. The warehouse loomed against the twilight sky, its broken windows reflecting the last traces of sunlight. Martha's car was already parked outside, Elijah standing guard beside it. "Third floor," he said as I approached. "Ronald's waiting with Austin. They have Marie." "The police?" 10 minutes out, but... He hesitated. "There's something else. The Singapore files, they weren't just about money laundering, they were about human trafficking, young girls sent overseas as students." The bruise on Marie's wrist flashed through my mind. That's why he wanted guardianship. "Eliana," Martha emerged from the shadows. "Jason's awake. He told the police everything. About Mother, about Dad's accident, about Ronald's operation. Then we end this. Now." The warehouse stairs creaked under our feet. Each step brought back memories. My father's smile, my mother's lies, Ronald's calculated manipulation of everyone I loved. We found them in what had once been an office. Marie sat in a corner, Austin's hand on her shoulder. Ronald stood by a desk covered in papers, looking almost bored. "Right on schedule," he said, "though I expected you sooner." "It's over," I said. "The police know everything, about Singapore, about the trafficking, about my father." "Do they?" he smiled. "Or do they have the story your mother's telling them? About how you've lost your mind with paranoid delusions, how you've been threatening Marie, tampering with hospital records?" "I have proof." "You have nothing. Every document, every recording, it all leads back to you. The perfect fall from grace. Respected nurse becomes unstable conspiracy theorist, loses everything," he gestured to Marie, "including her daughter." "Show her," Marie said suddenly. Ronald's smile faltered. "What?" "Show her what you made me record," my daughter's voice trembled. "The confession you forced me to make." Austin's grip tightened on her shoulder. "Marie. Or I could show them this instead." She pulled out her phone. Every meeting, every threat, every detail about Singapore, about what really happened to my grandfather. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ronald's mask cracked, revealing something feral beneath. "You ungrateful little..." He lunged for the phone. Several things happened at once. Austin pulled Marie back. Martha screamed. Elijah moved to intercept Ronald. And I saw the glint of metal in Ronald's hand. The gunshot echoed off concrete walls. Elijah stumbled, clutching his side. Martha ran to him as Ronald turned the gun toward Marie. "The phone," he said. "Now." "It's already uploaded," Marie said. "Everything, to every news outlet in the city, to the police, to the hospital board." "You're lying." "Check your phone," I said quietly. "The notifications should be starting right about now." His free hand fumbled for his pocket. As his attention wavered, Austin made his move, but not the one I expected. He shoved Marie toward Ronald. "We had a deal," Austin said. "I deliver her to Singapore, I get my cut." "You pathetic." Marie twisted away from both men. "I recorded you too, every promise, every plan. Did you really think I was that naive?" Sirens wailed in the distance. Ronald's composure shattered completely. "You're just like your father," he snarled at me. He couldn't understand either. The bigger picture, the necessity of sacrifice. "The only sacrifice," I said, "was letting you into our lives." He raised the gun again, but this time Marie was ready. She threw her phone at his face as Martha tackled him from behind. The gun skittered across the floor. Austin bolted for the door, but Elijah, despite his wound, caught him with a well-placed punch. "Singapore," Ronald spat as I picked up his gun. "You have no idea what you've lost. The connections, the power." "The only power you had," I said, "was what we gave you. And now?" I nodded toward the window where red and blue lights painted the warehouse walls. "Now you have nothing." As the police burst in, I watched my husband's empire crumble. But it was Marie's hand slipping into mine that told me we'd truly won. "Mom?" she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. About the recordings. You did exactly what you needed to do." I squeezed her hand. "You survived, just like I taught you." Through the broken windows, dawn began to break, the first light of a world without Ronald's shadows. The visiting room at the detention center smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Austin sat across from me, his charm replaced by something harder, more desperate. "I want a deal," he said. "You had your chance for deals." I placed a folder on the table. "But there's something you still haven't explained, the other girls." His eyes darted to the guard by the door. "I don't know what—" "Oh. Singapore wasn't just about Marie. Ronald's operation went back years. How many others did you help him target?" "Help him?" Austin's laugh was brittle. "You still don't get it, do you? This was my operation. Ronald was just the money man, the respectable face. I found the girls, I groomed them, He stopped, realizing too late what he'd admitted. Behind the two-way mirror, I knew the detectives were recording everything. "Marie was different," he continued quickly. "I actually cared." "Save it for your trial." I stood. "The Singapore authorities are particularly interested in your testimony." Outside, Marie waited with Martha. My daughter's face had regained its color, though the bruise on her wrist had faded to a yellowish reminder. "Did he confess?" she asked. "To everything, including the other victims." I touched her shoulder. "You saved them, you know. Your recordings, your courage, you brought down their entire network." "But not without help," she glanced at Martha. "Aunt Martha taught me how to hide the recordings, and Elijah is recovering well," Martha finished. "The doctors say he can leave the hospital next week." We drove to the courthouse where my mother's hearing was scheduled. Jason sat on the steps, looking frail but determined. "They're ready for us," he said. Inside, my mother wouldn't meet my eyes as she pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges. The judge's words washed over me. Sentences, restitution, closure. But it was my mother's final statement that cut deepest. "I thought I was protecting them," she said. "Like I protected myself when their father threatened to expose my affairs. Ronald promised to make it look like an accident." Marie squeezed my hand as the bailiff led my mother away. At home, our new home, bought with the recovered funds from Ronald's accounts, I found Marie in her father's old study. She held a photograph I hadn't seen in years. My father teaching me to ride a bike, his smile bright and real. "Do you hate her?" Marie asked. "Grandmother?" "No." I sat beside her. "Hate takes too much energy, and we need that energy for rebuilding." "The police found 3 more girls," she said quietly. "In Singapore. They're coming home. Because of you. Because we fought back. All of us." She traced my father's face in the photo. "Do you think he'd be proud? Of us exposing a trafficking ring? Of you being brave enough to gather evidence? Of our family choosing truth over comfortable lies?" I smiled. "Yes, but he'd be prouder of what we do next." "Which is?" "Live, help others. Remember that revenge isn't about destroying people, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." The doorbell rang. Martha stood outside with Marvin and Elijah carrying takeout containers. "The hospital board called," Marvin announced as we set up dinner. "They've reinstated you, with back pay and an apology." "And Ronald?" Martha asked, talking to prosecutors, trying to save himself. Elijah's wound made him wince as he sat. But with Austin's confession, Marie placed the last plate on the table. "Mom, I've been thinking about college." "Singapore's definitely off the list," I said. "Actually," she straightened, "I want to study criminal justice, help other families fight back." The evening light filtered through our new windows, casting warm shadows across faces that had weathered betrayal and emerged stronger, not unscathed, but unbroken. "First rule of fighting back," I said, raising my glass. "Never do it alone." "To family," Martha offered. "To truth," Elijah added. "To justice," Marie said firmly. "To all of it," I finished, "and to whatever comes next." Outside, the sun set on the remnants of Ronald's empire, but inside, surrounded by the people who'd fought beside me, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free.
The candles flickered across our dining room table like tiny searchlights, exposing every crack in Derek's performance. He'd arranged the silverware with military precision, uncorked an expensive Cabernet, and even picked up fresh flowers. Yellow roses, which I'd mentioned loving exactly once, 15 years ago. I'm Valerie, and I've spent 20 years learning to read my husband's tells. Tonight, they're screaming at me. "You outdid yourself," I said, watching him serve the pasta with practiced grace. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Another tell. Can't a man surprise his wife? Derek's voice carried that smooth, practiced tone he usually reserved for his clients. You've been working so hard lately. You deserve this. I took a careful sip of wine, buying time. Where's Ella? At Chelsea's for a study group. I thought we could use some alone time. The pasta was perfectly al dente, probably from that expensive Italian place downtown. Derek never cooked. He claimed he didn't have the patience for it, just like he didn't have the patience for parent-teacher conferences or Ella's violin recitals. How thoughtful, I said, twirling the pasta around my fork. Especially since you've been so busy with the new project. How's that going? His hand tightened slightly around his wine glass. Brilliantly. We're ahead of schedule, actually. The client's thrilled. Lie number 1. I'd seen the emails he'd forgotten to close on his laptop last night. The project was hemorrhaging money, and the client was threatening to pull out. That's wonderful, I smiled, matching his performance. And Ryan's team is handling everything well. A microscopic pause. Ryan's been invaluable. Lie number 2. Ryan Collins, my best friend Maggie's husband, had quit the project 3 weeks ago. Derek hadn't told me why. We should have them over for dinner soon, I suggested, watching his reaction. It's been ages since we've seen them. They're probably busy, he deflected, reaching for the wine bottle. More? I covered my glass with my hand. I'm good. Actually, I got an interesting call today. Derek's shoulders tensed slightly as he poured himself another generous glass. Oh? From the bank. I kept my voice light, casual. There seems to be some confusion about our joint account. Apparently there was a rather large withdrawal last week. The candlelight caught the sheen of sweat forming on his upper lip. Must be a mistake. I'll look into it tomorrow. Lie number 3. The biggest one yet. That's what I thought at first, I continued. But then I remembered something odd. Last month, when I was organising the Home Office, I found a receipt from a jewellery store. Cartier. Quite expensive. Derek's smile froze. Valerie. Our anniversary isn't for months, I cut in, and my birthday was last week. You got me a cookbook, remember? The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Outside, a car alarm went off, its wailing perfectly matching the moment. I can explain, he started, but I was already standing up, my napkin falling to the floor. Save it, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I already called Maggie. She told me everything. The colour drained from his face. What exactly did she tell you? Enough. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I'm staying at her place tonight. Don't call me, don't try to explain. And Derek? I paused at the doorway, looking back at the elaborate dinner scene he'd staged. Yellow roses are my mother's favourite, not mine. I hate them. Always have. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. Did you tell him? I typed back. Phase 1 complete. Your turn. The engine purred to life, and I caught a glimpse of Derek in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway with his perfect dinner falling apart behind him. He had no idea what was coming next. Neither did I, really. But for the first time in years, I felt absolutely certain about one thing. By the time this was over, he'd wish he'd never underestimated me. Maggie's guest room felt like a confessional booth at 3 a.m. I sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through years of Derek's financial records on my laptop while she paced, her wine glass making dangerous circles in the air. He's been moving money around for months, I said, pointing to a series of transactions. Small amounts at first, then bigger. Always on days when Ella had away games or competitions. The bastard used your daughter's schedule as cover. Maggie stopped pacing, her face hardening. What about the Cartier receipt? My phone buzzed. Ella's name lit up the screen. Mom, Dad's being weird. He keeps asking where you are but won't let me call you. You okay? I typed back quickly. Everything's fine, honey. Stay at Chelsea's tonight. Love you. Valerie? Maggie's voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize. There's something you need to know about Ryan's resignation. Before she could continue, her front door slammed. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Maggie! Ryan's voice boomed through the house. Your phone's been off. Derek's looking for... He burst into the room, freezing when he saw me. Valerie! Shit! Ryan, I said, closing my laptop. Perfect timing. Want to tell me why you really quit Derek's project? He exchanged a loaded look with Maggie. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. Ryan ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Derek's been cooking the books for years. The tech consulting. It's a front. He's been moving money for some very dangerous people. Money laundering? The words felt foreign in my mouth. Worse, Maggie cut in. He's been stealing from his clients, setting up fake projects, skimming millions. Ryan found out and threatened to expose him. That's when Derek showed me what he had on me, Ryan said quietly. Old mistakes. Things that could destroy my career, my marriage. He looked at Maggie. Our life. My phone buzzed again. Derek, come home. We can fix this. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. He's threatening you. Maggie moved closer to me, reading over my shoulder. No, I said, a cold clarity washing over me. He's threatening Ella. Ryan's face darkened. He wouldn't. You don't know him like I do, I cut in, already gathering my things. 20 years of marriage and I never saw it. The real him, until now. Where are you going? Maggie grabbed my arm. To get my daughter. You can't, Ryan blocked the doorway. Derek's got people watching Chelsea's house. They followed you here. The room tilted slightly. What people? The kind you don't want to meet, he said grimly. Listen, there's something else. The Cartier receipt? It wasn't for jewellery. Maggie shot him a warning look, but he continued. It was for a safety deposit box. Whatever's in there, it's what Derek's really afraid of losing. Not you, not Ella. Something worth killing for. My phone buzzed one final time. Derek again. Found it, Val. Should have changed your passwords. See you soon. The blood drained from my face. My laptop. The encrypted folder labelled insurance that I'd been collecting for months. Every transaction, every secret meeting, every lie carefully documented. He's bluffing, I said, but my hands shook as I tried to remotely access my cloud storage. Access denied. No, no, no. I frantically typed in another password, then another. Access denied. Access denied. Valerie, Maggie whispered, what exactly did you have in that folder? Everything, I breathed. And now? A car door slammed outside. Through the window I caught the gleam of Derek's BMW in the streetlight. He stepped out, adjusting his perfect suit, that familiar charming smile playing on his lips as he looked up at the window. Back door, Ryan commanded, already moving. Now! But I stood my ground, watching Derek approach the house. 20 years of manipulation, of careful lies and calculated affection, all leading to this moment. He thought he had me cornered, trapped by his threats and his power. What he didn't know was that the folder he'd found wasn't my only insurance policy. The real evidence was still safely hidden, waiting in a Cartier safety deposit box, one purchased with his own money, through his own careful schemes. I picked up my phone and typed one last message. Game on. The safety deposit box key felt impossibly heavy in my coat pocket as I walked through Cartier's polished doors. 3 security cameras tracked my movement. I wondered which ones Derek had already accessed. Mrs. Thompson. The manager's smile was practiced perfection. Your husband called ahead, said you might be stopping by. Of course he did. I matched her smile with equal precision. How thoughtful of him. She led me to the vault area, her heels clicking against marble floors. He mentioned you might need assistance accessing your box. Something about a misplaced key? Actually, I pulled out the key, watching her expression shift. I have it right here. The manager's smile flickered. She touched her earpiece, murmuring something I couldn't catch. One moment, please. My phone vibrated. Maggie. Derek's men just left Chelsea's. Ella's safe. Ryan's with her. Before I could respond, another message flashed. Derek. Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup key? The manager returned with a security guard. Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid there's been a problem with your box authorization. Has there? I kept my voice steady. That's interesting considering I'm the only authorized user. Your husband. Has no legal access, I cut in, pulling out a document. As you can see, this box was registered solely in my name. Any attempt to access it without my presence would be illegal. The manager's eyes darted between me and the paper. Another guard appeared by the vault entrance. My phone buzzed again. Derek. Check the news. I pulled up a financial news site. My stomach dropped. The headline screamed, Tech consultant Derek Thompson named in federal investigation. Below it, my own name appeared as a person of interest. Mrs. Thompson? The manager was watching me carefully. Is everything all right? Perfect, I said, though my hands had started to shake. The box, please. She hesitated, then nodded to the guards. They escorted us into the vault, where she inserted her master key alongside mine. The box slid out with a whisper of metal on metal. Inside lay a single USB drive and a folder of documents, copies of everything Derek thought he'd deleted from my cloud storage, plus something he didn't know I had. Recordings of his late-night phone calls, the ones he made from his home office when he thought I was sleeping. My phone lit up again. Maggie. Ryan just told me everything. About Derek. About what really happened 5 years ago. Val, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. The manager cleared her throat. Mrs. Thompson, we have another client waiting. I tucked the items into my bag, my mind racing. What did Maggie mean? What happened 5 years ago? Outside Cartier, a black SUV idled across the street. One of Derek's watchdogs, no doubt. I pulled out my phone and called the one number I'd been avoiding. Mom, Ella answered on the first ring. What's going on? Dad's face is all over the news, and these men were watching Chelsea's house and... Listen carefully, I cut in. Stay with Ryan. Don't tell anyone where you are. Not even Maggie. Especially not Maggie. Mom, you're scaring me. I know, honey. I'm scared too. My voice cracked. But I'm going to fix this. All of it. How? The SUV's engine rumbled to life. By doing what I should have done 5 years ago when I first suspected something was wrong, I'm going to make your father tell the truth. About what? Another text from Derek appeared. Last chance, Val. Meet me at the house in 1 hour. Alone. Or the FBI gets proof of your involvement. Mom? I watched the SUV pull away from the curb, tracking my movements. About everything, sweetheart. About the money laundering, about Ryan's resignation, and about what really happened to your Aunt Sarah. The line went silent. Then, barely a whisper. Dad said Aunt Sarah moved to Europe. No, honey. I stepped into a taxi, giving the driver our home address. That's just what he wanted everyone to believe. My phone buzzed one final time. An unknown number. Mrs. Thompson, this is Special Agent Carter with the FBI. We need to discuss your husband's activities and a missing person case from 2018. Please call immediately. The taxi merged into traffic, carrying me toward a confrontation 20 years in the making. Derek thought he was forcing my hand, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd learned all my best moves from him, and unlike my husband, I never played a card without knowing exactly how the game would end. The taxi crawled through evening traffic while I played Ryan's voicemail for the 3rd time. Sarah didn't leave for Europe. She found something in Derek's files. Something about offshore accounts and a company called Nexus Solutions. The night before she disappeared, she called me. Said she needed to meet. She never showed. I clicked off the phone as we pulled up to my house. Derek's BMW sat in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar silver Audi. Through the living room window, I caught glimpses of moving shadows. Keep the meter running, I told the driver. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Derek stood by the fireplace, drinking scotch with a man I'd never seen before. Both turned as I entered. There she is, Derek smiled, all warmth and charm. Agent Carter, this is my wife, Valerie. The FBI agent didn't smile back. Mrs. Thompson, we were just discussing your sister-in-law's European adventure. I set my bag down carefully, keeping the USB drive close. Were you? Fascinating story, Carter continued. She apparently moved to Brussels in 2018. No forwarding address, no social media presence, not even a passport record. It's almost like she vanished into thin air. People do that sometimes, Derek said smoothly. Start fresh, leave everything behind. Not Sarah, I countered, watching Derek's fingers tighten around his glass. She wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to her daughter. Emma still asks about her. Carter's eyebrows rose slightly. I wasn't aware Sarah had a child. Ex-husband's custody, Derek cut in quickly. Messy divorce. Another reason she left. My phone buzzed. Maggie. Don't trust Ryan. He's not telling you everything about Sarah. Mrs. Thompson. Carter set down his drink. Your husband claims you handled all the family's financial documentation, including transfers to Nexus Solutions. Derek's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. Val's always been better with numbers than me. Actually, I moved toward my laptop on the coffee table. I have some documentation you might find interesting, Agent Carter. About Nexus, about Sarah, and about what really happened to those missing client funds. Valerie. Derek's voice carried a warning. Think about Ella. I am thinking about Ella. I opened my laptop, typing in the password. I'm thinking about how she deserves to know what happened to her aunt. The screen remained black. I tried again. Nothing. Looking for this, Derek held up a small circuit board. Amazing what you can learn about computers when you're married to someone in tech. Like how to remove a hard drive. Carter watched our exchange with increasing interest. Mrs. Thompson, if you're attempting to cooperate— She's not, Derek interrupted. Are you, Val? Because that would mean admitting your own involvement. The transfers you authorized, the accounts you helped manage. Sarah figured it out, didn't she? That's why she came to you first. My blood ran cold. What? Oh, did Ryan not mention that part? Derek's smile turned cruel. Sarah reached out to you before she disappeared, left you a message about meeting at that little cafe you both loved. But you never showed up, did you? Too busy covering our tracks. That's a lie, but my voice shook. I never got any message. Check your old voicemails, Derek suggested. The ones from that phone you lost right after Sarah vanished. The one I replaced as an anniversary gift. The room spun slightly. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Agent Carter, I started, but he was already pulling out handcuffs. Valerie Thompson, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding the disappearance of Sarah Thompson and the misappropriation of client funds through Nexus Solutions. My phone buzzed one final time. Ryan. Found Sarah's real message. It wasn't meant for you. She was trying to warn Maggie about Derek, about what he did to her husband. The pieces clicked into place. Maggie's strange behavior, Ryan's guilt, Derek's perfect alibi. All this time, I'd been looking at the wrong puzzle. Agent Carter, I said quietly, before you arrest anyone, you might want to ask my husband about Thomas Collins. Derek's glass shattered on the floor. Maggie's first husband, I continued, watching the colour drain from Derek's face. The one who died in that convenient car accident the same week Sarah disappeared. The one whose life insurance policy listed Nexus Solutions as the beneficiary. Carter's hand moved to his weapon. Mr. Thompson? But Derek was already running for the back door, leaving me standing in the wreckage of our lives, finally seeing the full picture of his betrayal. And my own unwitting role in it. Agent Carter's team swarmed the house while I sat in Maggie's kitchen, watching her hands shake as she poured coffee. The morning news played silently on her tablet. Tech executives still at large. FBI expands search. You should have told me about Thomas, I said quietly. Maggie's cup clattered against the counter. I couldn't. Derek, he had evidence that Thomas's death wasn't an accident, evidence that would have implicated Ryan. And Sarah found out. She was always too clever. Maggie's voice cracked. She traced the insurance payout to Nexus, then connected it to Thomas's brake lines being cut. She thought she was protecting me by confronting Derek first. My phone lit up. Unknown number. Storage Unit 247, midnight. Come alone if you want to know the truth. D. He's desperate, Ryan said from the doorway, making us both jump. The FBI found Thomas's real autopsy report this morning. Derek's running out of options. And allies, I added, watching Maggie carefully. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Val, she whispered, there's something else, about the night Sarah disappeared. Before she could continue, my phone rang. Ella. Mum? There's someone at Chelsea's house. They say they're from Dad's office, but... The line went dead. Ryan was already grabbing his keys. I'll get her. No. I stood up, my voice steadier than I felt. You've both done enough. This ends tonight. Valerie, wait! Maggie caught my arm. The storage unit. It's where Derek kept everything. All the evidence, including what really happened to Sarah, but he's not alone. There are others involved, powerful people who killed your husband? I pulled away. Or who helped cover it up? Her face crumpled. Both. I checked my watch. 8 hours until midnight. 8 hours to decide who to trust, how to protect Ella, and whether revenge was worth the cost. My phone buzzed again. Agent Carter. Mrs. Thompson, we found something in your sister-in-law's old apartment. Something about you. The message included a photo, a letter in Sarah's handwriting, dated the day before she vanished. My hands trembled as I read, Val, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Derek didn't just kill Thomas, he's been eliminating anyone who threatens his operation. The evidence is in Storage Unit 247, but be careful. Maggie isn't who you think she is. She and Derek. The rest was torn off. I need to go, I said, already moving toward the door. Where? Ryan stepped in my path. To get my daughter, then to finish what Sarah started. You can't trust Derek, Maggie pleaded. I don't. I turned back, seeing them both clearly for the first time. But I trusted you, and look where that got us. My phone chimed one last time. Derek. Ella's safe. For now. Midnight. Come alone, or Sarah won't be the only sister you lose. I walked out of Maggie's house, leaving behind the coffee, the excuses, and any illusion of friendship. In my purse, the USB drive from the safety deposit box felt like a loaded gun. On it was everything Sarah had discovered, about Thomas, about Nexus, about Derek's entire operation. What Derek didn't know was that I'd already sent copies to every major news outlet and federal agency. They would go public at 12:01 a.m., 1 minute after our midnight meeting. The question wasn't whether Derek would fall. That was inevitable now. The question was how many people he'd take down with him, and whether Ella and I would survive the collapse. I got into my car, checking the glove compartment where Sarah's old gun still lay hidden. She'd given it to me years ago, saying sometimes protection meant being willing to pull the trigger. I hadn't understood then. I did now. As I pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Maggie in her window, phone pressed to her ear. Warning Derek? Warning Ryan? It didn't matter anymore. In 8 hours, everyone's true face would be revealed, including mine. I just hoped Ella would forgive me for what I had to do next. Storage Unit 247 loomed before me, its metal door reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. 11:58 p.m., Sarah's gun pressed against my lower back, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The lock clicked open. Inside, Derek stood next to a bound figure in a chair. Ella, head bowed, shoulders shaking. Right on time, Derek said, closing the door behind me. Always so punctual, Val. So predictable. Let her go. Show me the USB drive first. I pulled it from my pocket, holding it up. Show me she's okay. Derek yanked the hood off Ella's head. She blinked in the harsh light, a bruise darkening her cheek. Our eyes met, and she tried to speak through her gag. You hit our daughter. My voice came out flat, deadly. Actually, a familiar voice said behind me. I did. Maggie stepped out of the shadows holding a gun. Sorry about that, Val. She struggled. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. Let me guess. You're the one who killed Sarah too? No, Derek laughed softly. That was all me. Sarah made the mistake of threatening to expose everything, the money laundering, Thomas's murder, the offshore accounts. I couldn't let that happen. And Thomas? That was me, Maggie said quietly. He found out about Derek and me, about how long we'd been together. He had to go. The pieces clicked into place. The long business trips, the late-night calls, the way Derek always seemed to know Maggie's schedule. 20 years, I said, understanding finally dawning. You've been playing me for 20 years. Longer, Derek admitted. Since college, Maggie and I had the perfect plan. Marry other people, build our alibis, run our operation through legitimate businesses. It worked beautifully until Sarah got suspicious. My phone vibrated. 12 Akaos a.m. 1 minute until everything went public. The USB, Derek demanded, pressing a gun to Ella's temple. I held it out, hands steady. Take it. Derek grabbed it, tossing it to Maggie. Check it. While Maggie plugged it into her laptop, I inched closer to Ella. Just a few more seconds. It's encrypted, Maggie frowned. The password, Derek ordered. Sarah, I said softly. The password is Sarah. Maggie typed it in. Her face went pale. Derek, it's empty. 12:01 a.m. My phone buzzed again. Now, I said, check the news. Derek's phone chimed, then Maggie's, then the sound of police sirens outside. What did you do? Derek's face contorted. I sent everything to the press, the FBI, everyone. I moved between him and Ella. Sarah taught me well, always keep backups. You're bluffing, Maggie said, but her hands shook as she checked her phone. Breaking news. Tech scandal exposed. Multiple murders linked to Nexus Solutions. Derek lunged for me, but I was ready. Sarah's gun felt natural in my hands as I pulled it from my waistband. Don't, I warned. The storage unit door burst open. FBI agents poured in, Agent Carter leading them. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Everything happened at once. Maggie fired. I fired back. Derek tried to run, the air filled with gunshots and screams. When the chaos cleared, Maggie lay clutching her shoulder. Derek was in handcuffs, and I held Ella as she sobbed into my chest. Mom, she choked out, I heard everything. About Aunt Sarah, about... I know, baby. I stroked her hair, avoiding the bruise on her cheek. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Carter approached, we need to take your statement. I nodded, still holding Ella. As they led Derek past us, he paused. You really think this is over? He sneered. You have no idea how deep this goes. Who else is involved? You've just signed our daughter's death warrant. No, I said, watching his smug expression falter. I've just guaranteed her safety, because now everyone knows exactly what happens to people who threaten my family. They took him away, but his words echoed in my head. He was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Somewhere out there, more players waited in the shadows, more secrets threatened to surface. But for now, I held my daughter and watched the sunrise through the storage unit's small window, understanding finally that revenge wasn't about winning. It was about surviving. The interrogation room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Derek's face as I sat across from him. 3 days since the storage unit showdown, and his perfect facade had finally cracked. You're not here to press charges, he said, studying me. So why come? I placed Sarah's old phone on the metal table between us. Because of this, his eyes flickered with recognition. Where did you... Ryan found it, in Maggie's safety deposit box, the one you helped her set up after Sarah disappeared. I pressed play on the last voicemail. Sarah's voice filled the room. Maggie, I know about the transfers. About Thomas. Derek's planning something big and you're next. Meet me at... I stopped the recording. She wasn't warning me that night. She was trying to save your girlfriend's life. And now Maggie's in custody anyway. Derek leaned back, chains rattling. Ironic, isn't it? Where's Sarah's body? His smile didn't reach his eyes. You know I can't tell you that. Can't, or won't. I slid a document across the table. Your empire's falling apart, Derek. Your clients are turning on you. But I can help. Help? He laughed. You destroyed everything. No, I exposed everything. There's a difference. I tapped the document. This is a deal from the FBI. Full immunity in exchange for names. All of them. You really think I'd... Ella's college fund, I cut in. The offshore account in her name. The one you thought I didn't know about. Sign this, and it stays hidden. His facade cracked further. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone, showing him the account details. $20 million, Derek. Blood money from every deal, every murder, every betrayal. Sign the deal, or I send this to Agent Carter right now. You'd steal from your own daughter. I'd protect her from becoming an accessory to murder. My finger hovered over the send button. Your choice. Derek stared at the document, then at me. You've changed. No, I've woken up. I stood, gathering my things. You have until midnight to decide. After that, Ella loses everything. Just like Sarah's daughter did. Wait. His chains clinked as he reached for the pen. There's something you should know first about Ryan. Save it. I already know he was your inside man at the FBI. I watched his expression shift. Why do you think he's in the next room right now, making his own deal? You played us all, Derek whispered, realization dawning. I learned from the best. I pushed the pen closer. Now sign. As Derek scrawled his signature, a knock came at the door. Agent Carter entered with Ryan in handcuffs. It's done, Ryan said. All of it. The accounts, the bodies, everything. Including Sarah? I asked quietly. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Including Sarah. Derek lunged across the table, but the chains held him back. You treacherous. Careful, I warned. Your immunity deal doesn't cover new charges. You think this is over? Derek snarled. You think you've won? There are still people out there, people who just lost everything, I finished. Check your phone. Oh, wait. You can't. But if you could, you'd see that every name Ryan just gave us is already in custody. Your safety net is gone. The truth hit him like a physical blow. For the first time in 20 years, I saw real fear in his eyes. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Carter said, we're ready for Sarah's location. I turned to leave, but Derek called after me. How long? How long what? How long have you been planning this? Working with the FBI? Setting us all up? I paused at the door, thinking of Sarah's last message, of Ella's bruised face, of 20 years of lies. Since the moment you forgot the most important thing about me. Which is? I'm not just your wife, Derek. I'm also a sister, and sisters don't abandon each other. I looked back one last time. Not even after death. The door closed on Derek's face, leaving him alone with his choices, his consequences, and the ghost of every life he'd destroyed in his pursuit of power. Outside, Ella waited with Agent Carter, clutching Sarah's old diary. Did he sign? He did. I took her hand. Ready to say goodbye to Aunt Sarah? She nodded, tears in her eyes. Ready. Together we walked toward the waiting cars, toward closure, toward whatever came next in our story of survival and justice. Behind us, Derek's empire crumbled to dust. The autumn wind scattered leaves across Sarah's newly placed headstone. After 5 years, we'd finally brought her home. Ella knelt beside the grave, arranging fresh flowers while I watched from a few steps back, giving her space to say goodbye. She would have loved these, Ella said, touching the yellow roses. Sarah's favourite, not mine. Another lie Derek had gotten wrong. My phone buzzed. Agent Carter. Derek's sentencing tomorrow. Still don't want to attend. I typed back, no need. We've moved on. The media circus around Derek's empire had finally quieted. Maggie's testimony had sealed his fate, along with dozens of others. Ryan's deal had saved him from the worst charges, but his career was over. Justice, or something close to it. Mom? Ella stood, brushing dirt from her knees. I found this in Aunt Sarah's diary. It's for you. She handed me a weathered envelope. Inside was a key and a note in Sarah's familiar scrawl. For when it's over, Storage Unit 248. My hands trembled. All this time, the truth had been next door to Derek's unit. Should we go? Ella asked. The storage facility looked different in daylight. Unit 248's lock clicked open easily, revealing a small space filled with cardboard boxes, each one labelled meticulously. Evidence. Photos. Emma's future. Emma? Ella picked up a framed picture. Sarah's daughter. Your cousin. I opened the first box, finding stacks of documents. Sarah was gathering evidence against Derek long before she disappeared. She knew he'd come after her eventually. So she left a backup plan. She left insurance. I lifted out a USB drive labeled everything. For Emma. For us. For everyone Derek hurt. Ella's phone chimed. She checked it, then showed me the screen. A news alert. Breaking, tech mogul Derek Thompson found dead in cell hours before sentencing. My hands didn't shake this time. Suicide? They're investigating. Ella watched me carefully. Are you okay? I thought about Derek's last words to me during our final visit yesterday. You'll never know everything, Val. Some secrets stay buried. Now he'd buried them permanently. Mom? Ella touched my arm. There's something else in that box. Beneath the documents lay a sealed letter addressed to Emma, and beneath that, a photo I'd never seen before. Sarah at her desk, pregnant with Emma, smiling at the camera. On the back, she'd written, "Some fights choose us. The trick isn't winning, it's knowing when to stop." What do we do now? Ella asked. I picked up Emma's letter. We find your cousin. Tell her everything. Let her decide what to do with Sarah's insurance policy. And the rest? I looked at the boxes of evidence, at 5 years of Sarah's meticulous planning, at all the secrets that had died with Derek. We burn it. Sarah didn't want revenge. She wanted protection. For Emma, for you, for everyone these secrets could still hurt. But Derek got what he deserved. I pulled out my lighter. Sometimes justice isn't about exposing everything. Sometimes it's about knowing which truths to bury and which ones to set free. We worked in silence, burning each document, each photo, each piece of evidence Sarah had gathered. As the last box emptied, Ella spoke quietly. Aunt Sarah knew, didn't she, that it would end like this? She knew Derek better than anyone. I pocketed Emma's letter. She knew the only way to truly stop him was to let him destroy himself. The final photo curled in the flames. Derek and Maggie at a college party, young and unguarded, their future crimes still unwritten. As it burned, my phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. Mom, this is Emma. Agent Carter gave me your number. Can we meet? Ella read the message over my shoulder. Ready? I thought about Sarah's words. Some fights choose us. But maybe the real choice comes after, in how we end them, in what we keep and what we let go, in how we rebuild from the ashes of revenge. Ready, I said, taking Ella's hand. We left the storage unit empty, carrying only Emma's letter and the weight of choices yet to come. Behind us, the last embers of Derek's secrets turned to ash, and ahead, the autumn wind scattered leaves like memories across our path home.
Numbers don't lie. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at my laptop screen, watching our joint account balance mock me with its glaring discrepancy. $50,000. Gone. Just like that, without a trace or explanation. I'm Layla, and until this moment, I thought I knew everything about my husband, Ethan. 12 years of marriage had taught me his habits, his tells, the way his left eye twitches when he's nervous. But nothing had prepared me for this. Hey, everything okay? Marcus poked his head into my office, his familiar concerned expression making me quickly minimize the banking window. You missed the morning briefing. Did I? My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, trying to maintain composure. Sorry, I got caught up in some calculations. Marcus stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Layla, you've been staring at your screen for the past hour. I can see your reflection in the window. I forced a smile, but my hands were shaking as I reached for my coffee mug. It's nothing, just some personal stuff. Personal stuff doesn't usually make you miss presenting the quarterly projections to the board. He leaned against my desk, his presence both comforting and intrusive. Want to talk about it? The mug trembled in my grip. Ethan's been different lately. Distant, and now I'm looking at our accounts and I stopped myself, shame burning my cheeks. I shouldn't be discussing this at work. Different how? Late nights, mysterious phone calls. Last week he claimed he was visiting his sister in Phoenix, but when I called her,
I set the mug down before I could spill it. She hadn't seen him in months. Marcus's expression darkened. Have you confronted him? He's got an explanation for everything. Always does. I pulled up the banking window again, pointing to the transaction history. But numbers don't lie, right? $50,000, transferred to an account I've never seen before. Jesus, Marcus whispered, leaning closer to examine the screen. When did this happen? 3 days ago, while I was at that conference in Boston. My phone buzzed on the desk, Ethan's face lighting up the screen. I let it ring. You should answer it, Marcus suggested, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I shook my head. Not until I figure out what I'm dealing with. I need to be smart about this. The phone stopped buzzing, only to start again immediately. This time, a text message appeared. Need to talk. Important. Please call me back. E. Whatever you decide to do, Marcus straightened up, heading for the door. Just remember you've got people in your corner. After he left, I sat there staring at Ethan's message, my mind racing through possibilities, each worse than the last. The pharmaceutical company where I worked had strict policies about personal matters affecting professional performance. I couldn't let this situation spiral out of control. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Found us an amazing investment opportunity. We'll explain everything tonight. Love you. Investment opportunity. The words hit me like a slap. I remembered the last time he'd used that phrase. 3 years ago when he convinced his parents to refinance their house for a sure thing that ended up costing them their retirement savings. He'd sworn it wasn't his fault, that he'd been misled too. I'd believed him then. I opened my drawer and pulled out the business card Dr. Simmons had given me last month, during Ethan's physical. Call me if you need to talk, she'd said, with an odd emphasis I hadn't understood at the time. Maybe she'd seen something I'd missed. The office suddenly felt too small, too confining. I gathered my things, told my assistant I was taking a personal day, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Marcus watching me from his office, his expression unreadable. I had no idea then that this was just the beginning, that the missing money would be the least of my concerns. But something inside me had shifted, like a switch being flipped. The trust I'd built my marriage on was crumbling, and in its place, something darker was taking root. The drive to Dr. Simmons's office felt like navigating through quicksand. Every red light stretched into eternity, every turn bringing me closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. The business card sat heavy in my pocket, its edges worn from my constant fidgeting. Dr. Simmons's receptionist recognized me immediately. Mrs. Harrison, doctors between patients, she said to send you right in when you arrived. The examination room smelled of antiseptic and secrets. Dr. Simmons stood by her desk, already waiting. I wondered when you'd call, she said, gesturing to a chair. How much do you know? About what? My voice sounded hollow, even to me. She pulled out a file, hesitating before opening it. During Ethan's last visit, I noticed some inconsistencies in his medical history, previous conditions that didn't match his records. What kind of inconsistencies? The kind that make me wonder if the Ethan Harrison in my office was the same Ethan Harrison from his previous medical records. She paused, studying my face. Have you ever verified his background? My phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. Where are you? We need to talk about the investment. Time sensitive. Dr. Simmons noticed my hands shaking. Layla, there's something else. The prescription he requested last month. The office door opened. A nurse poked her head in. Doctor, your next patient is here. Give me 5 minutes, Dr. Simmons replied, then turned back to me. Listen carefully. Don't confront him yet. Get copies of all your financial documents first. And Layla, check the name Richard Thorne. Back at work, I couldn't focus. Marcus stopped by twice, but I barely registered his concerned looks. My computer screen blurred as I typed Richard Thorne into various search engines. Nothing significant appeared until I added fraud to the search. A newspaper article from 6 years ago showed a grainy photo of a man being led away by police. The image quality was poor, but something about the slope of his shoulders, the way he held his head. My office phone rang, startling me. Layla speaking. Hey, it's Sophie. Your sister's been trying to reach you. Something about Ethan showing up at her place. My blood ran cold. What? Lily said he was asking weird questions about your family's assets, claiming he needed the information for some kind of surprise for you. She felt uncomfortable. When was this? Yesterday afternoon. She tried calling you, but... I hung up, already dialing Lily's number. It went straight to voicemail. A knock at my door made me jump. Marcus entered, closing the door behind him. Board meeting in 10 minutes, but first, you need to see this. He placed a document on my desk, a copy of an email chain. This came through the company's compliance department. Someone's been accessing our confidential research data using your login credentials. That's impossible. The access points trace back to your home IP address. Late night hours when you're usually asleep. The pieces started falling into place. Ethan's late nights at home, his sudden interest in my work computer, the missing money. My stomach churned. I've delayed reporting this, Marcus continued, his voice low. But if there's something going on, I need to get home. I stood up, gathering my things. Tell them I'm sick. Layla, wait. Marcus caught my arm. Let me help. Whatever's happening. You can't. I pulled away, but his grip tightened slightly. At least let me drive you. You're shaking. In the parking lot, my car wouldn't start. The engine made a sickening grinding noise before falling silent. Marcus insisted on checking under the hood and found several cables deliberately disconnected. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, coming home early. Big news about our future. Everything's falling into place. I showed Marcus the message. His jaw tightened. You're not going back there alone. I have to. If he suspects I know anything. I trailed off, remembering Dr. Simmons's warning. Then we need a plan. Marcus pulled out his phone. I know someone in corporate security. Give me an hour. As we sat in his car, plotting my next move, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow. Harder, more determined. The trust I'd lost wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. The garage door was open when Marcus dropped me off. My car, the one that wouldn't start earlier, sat in the driveway, pristine and seemingly untouched. Ethan leaned against it, phone in hand, wearing that disarming smile that used to make my heart skip. There you are, he called out. You wouldn't believe the day I've had. The investment's locked in. We're looking at triple returns within 6 months. I felt Marcus's car idling behind me, his presence a silent guardian. The car's working now. Had Tom take a look at it. Simple fix. Ethan gestured toward our neighbor's house. You worry too much, honey. Tom appeared in his driveway, giving me an awkward wave. Something in his expression made me uneasy. Weird coincidence, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Those cables must have come loose on their own. Marcus's car finally pulled away. The sound felt like abandonment. Inside, Ethan moved with unusual energy, pulling papers from his briefcase. Look at these projections. The returns are guaranteed. We just need to move quickly. Maybe liquidate some of your pharmaceutical stocks. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Call me now, emergency. I need to use the bathroom, I said, already moving toward the stairs. Ethan's hand caught my wrist. This can't wait, Layla. The opportunity expires tonight. I pulled away, forcing a smile. 5 minutes. In the bathroom, I called Lily. She answered on the first ring. He knows, she whispered. About Dr. Simmons, about everything. He was here again, asking about your trust fund. When I wouldn't tell him, Her voice cracked. The things he said about you, about our family. Are you safe? Sophie's picking me up, but Layla, there's more. I found something when he was here, a phone. Not his regular one. There were messages about... The line went dead. My hand shook as I tried calling back.
Nothing. Downstairs, Ethan's voice carried up the stairs. He was on the phone. Yes, everything's proceeding as planned. She suspects nothing. No, that won't be a problem much longer. I crept closer to the stairs, straining to hear. The sister's becoming an issue. Yes, I understand. It'll be handled. No, Richard Thorne doesn't exist anymore. I made sure of that. My foot hit a creaky floorboard. The conversation stopped abruptly. Layla? Ethan called out. You've been up there a while. Everything okay? I flushed the toilet, buying time. When I came downstairs, he had a glass of wine waiting. Your favorite, he said, holding it out. I remembered Dr. Simmons's words about his prescription requests. Actually, I'm not feeling well. Maybe we should discuss this tomorrow. His smile tightened. The opportunity expires tonight, remember? Just take a sip, relax, and let me handle everything. The doorbell rang. Through the glass panels, I saw Marcus. What's he doing here? Ethan's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Probably about the board meeting I missed. I moved toward the door, but Ethan blocked my path. You've been spending a lot of time with your manager lately. It's work-related, like those late-night emails from the company server. His mask slipped for a moment, revealing something cold beneath. You should be more careful with your passwords, honey. The doorbell rang again. 3 sharp, urgent rings. Don't answer it. Ethan's command was soft but absolute. My phone buzzed again, a text from Sophie. Lily's safe, police involved, get out now. Move, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Or what? He stepped closer, his familiar cologne now suffocating. You'll tell them about Richard Thorne? About the missing money? Who do you think they'll believe? The loving husband worried about his unstable wife, or the woman making wild accusations? The wine glass in his hand trembled slightly. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't sure how much I knew. The front door crashed open. Marcus stood there with 2 police officers, Tom right behind them, clutching what looked like security camera footage. I'm sorry, Tom said, looking at Ethan. I couldn't do it anymore, not after what you asked me to do to her car. The wine glass shattered on the floor, dark red spreading like blood across our pristine white tiles. In that moment, watching Ethan's carefully constructed world begin to crumble, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Chen pushed another cup of coffee across the table while I replayed the security footage Tom had provided. On the screen, Ethan methodically disconnected my car's cables, his movements precise, practiced, not the clumsy work of an amateur. Mrs. Harrison, Detective Chen said, we found something interesting in your neighbor's garage. Want to tell me about these? She slid photographs across the table. Surveillance equipment, far more sophisticated than anything Tom could afford. Next to them, printouts of my daily schedule, annotated in Ethan's familiar handwriting. I've never seen these. Your neighbor claims Ethan paid him to install them 3 months ago, right around the time your company started clinical trials on the new cancer drug. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. The timing wasn't a coincidence. There's more. She produced a laptop. Your sister's phone was recovered. The contents are concerning. The video played. Ethan in Lily's living room, his charm turned predatory. Your sister's always been the smart one, hasn't she? Figuring things out too quickly. But accidents happen, Lily, especially to people who ask too many questions. My hands clenched until my nails cut into my palms. I want to press charges. That's the thing. Detective Chen closed the laptop. We can't find him. His fingerprints match 3 different identities in our database. Richard Thorne is just one of them. A knock interrupted us. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. They found something at the office. In the elevator up to our floor, Marcus kept glancing at me. You should prepare yourself, he said finally. My office door hung open. Inside, forensics teams photographed my decimated workspace. My computer was gutted, hard drive missing, but worse were the walls, covered in photographs. Me sleeping, shopping, meeting Dr. Simmons, having lunch with Marcus. "He's been watching me for months," I whispered. "Not just you." Marcus pointed to a stack of papers on my desk. These were hidden in his cloud storage. "He's been selling company research to competitors, using your login credentials." The room spun. "The clinical trials. Compromised. The board's meeting now to discuss damage control." My phone buzzed. An unknown number. The text contained only an image. Lily's house, current timestamp, lights on inside. "He's there," I said, showing Marcus. "He's at my sister's house right now." "Police are on their way," Detective Chen called from the doorway. "Don't." But I was already running, Marcus close behind. In the parking garage, he grabbed my arm. "You can't go alone. He's my husband. My responsibility." "Was your husband," Marcus corrected. "And he's not working alone. Think about the resources needed for this level of surveillance. Someone's backing him." Another text arrived, a video of Lily entering her house, unaware she was being filmed. Below it, words that made my blood freeze. "Should have taken the wine, honey." Marcus's keys jangled between us. "I'm driving." The 15-minute drive to Lily's house felt endless. Marcus broke every speed limit while I tried calling her. No answer. "There's something you should know," Marcus said, turning onto her street. "The board meeting today, it wasn't just about the trials. Someone's been accessing restricted files about our pharmaceutical patents. Files only accessible from your home network." Understanding hit like a physical blow. The investment opportunity he kept pushing was never about money. It was about access. We turned the corner to Lily's house. Every light blazed, but her car was missing. In the driveway stood Sophie, frantically waving us down. "She's not here," Sophie called out as we approached, "but he left this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a single photograph, Ethan and me on our wedding day. On the back, in his handwriting, "You really should learn to trust your husband, Layla. Now everyone pays the price." My phone buzzed one final time. A video. Lily tied to a chair, terror in her eyes. Behind her, Ethan's voice. "Ready to discuss those patents now, honey?" The screen went black, leaving only my reflection, a woman I barely recognized anymore. The time for playing victim was over. Ethan wanted to see how far I'd go to protect what's mine. He was about to find out. "Call Detective Chen," I told Marcus, already heading back to the car. "Tell her to meet us at the office. I know where he's taking her." The abandoned research facility loomed before us, its darkened windows reflecting the last rays of sunset. Marcus killed the engine, but I was already moving, Dr. Simmons's voicemail replaying in my head. "Layla, I found his original medical records. The man you married, he's done this before. 3 times. The wives all disappeared. Security cameras tracked our approach. Good, let him see me coming." "You realize this is exactly what he wants," Marcus said, matching my stride. "He's counting on you being emotional, making mistakes. He has my sister, and a team of corporate spies backing him. The police are 15 minutes out. We should wait." "You don't have to come." His hand caught my arm. "That's not what I meant. The key card I'd stolen from Ethan's desk months ago still worked." The door clicked open, releasing stale air and memories. This was where we'd first met, where he'd charmed his way into my life with that perfect smile and carefully crafted backstory. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly shadows. Our footsteps echoed through empty corridors until a familiar voice cut through the darkness. "Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my own wife's perfume?" Ethan's voice came through the PA system, distorted but unmistakable. "3rd floor, honey, just like our first date, remember?" Marcus reached for his phone. I stopped him. "No signal, he's jamming it." "Layla?" The concern in his voice made me pause. "What aren't you telling me?" Before I could answer, a scream pierced the silence. "Lily." We ran toward the stairs, but the sound of a door slamming stopped us. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of movement in the parking lot. He's playing us, Marcus realized. Splitting us up. Another scream, closer this time. Marcus hesitated, torn between following me and checking the parking lot. Go, I said. I know where he's keeping her. The third-floor laboratory still smelled of chemicals and broken dreams. This was where our company's failed cancer drug had been developed, where millions had been lost, where Ethan had first accessed our research. Lily sat tied to a chair in the center of the room, duct tape across her mouth. Behind her, screens displayed security footage of the building, including Marcus heading toward the parking lot. The famous big sister coming to the rescue. Ethan emerged from the shadows, holding something that made my blood freeze. My old research notebook. You know what I found interesting about your early trials? The unreported side effects, the deaths you covered up. Let her go. This is between us. Is it? He flipped through the notebook. Your sister was so helpful, telling me where you kept your backup data. All those years of falsified research hidden away in a safety deposit box. Imagine the board's reaction when this leaks. Lily's muffled protest drew my attention. Her eyes weren't showing fear anymore. They were trying to tell me something. You're not the only one who can play detective, honey. Ethan's smile turned cruel. Did you really think Marcus was helping you out of the goodness of his heart? Ask him about Project Eclipse. Ask him who really authorized those failed trials. Movement behind Ethan caught my eye. A reflection in the darkened windows. Marcus, gun raised. You destroyed everything I built, I said, keeping Ethan's attention. My marriage, my career, my family. No, sweetheart, you did that yourself. I just exposed the truth about who you really are. He moved closer, notebook extended like a peace offering. But we can still fix this. Together, just like before. The gunshot shattered the silence. But Ethan didn't fall. Instead, Marcus crashed through the door, blood spreading across his shirt. Sorry, honey. Ethan's smile never wavered. Didn't I mention, your friend Tom's been very cooperative since we found those tax fraud records. Lily's chair toppled as she fought against her restraints. Marcus lay motionless, and something inside me, something I'd kept caged since discovering that first missing payment, finally broke free. I lunged for the notebook, but Ethan was faster. As we grappled, his phone clattered to the floor, revealing an open email. Project Eclipse termination authorized. Eliminate all witnesses. The implications hit harder than any physical blow. This wasn't just about stealing research or ruining my life. This was about silencing everyone who knew the truth. And I had just led Marcus right to him. Marcus's blood stained my hands as I pressed against his wound. Behind me, Lily had worked one hand free, but Ethan's attention was fixed on his phone, reading something that made him laugh. You know what's funny? He held up the screen. Your sister just got copied on every illegal trial document you ever signed. The board, the FDA, even those grieving families. They'll all know exactly who covered up those deaths. He's lying, Marcus gasped, his voice barely audible. Layla, the trials weren't your fault. Ethan's smile widened. Tell her, Marcus. Tell her who really ordered those experimental treatments, who falsified the consent forms. The laboratory lights flickered, casting strange shadows across Marcus's paling face. I had to protect the company, he whispered, but I never meant for anyone to die. The truth hit like physical pain. All those patients, all those families seeking answers. And I'd helped hide it. My signature on every document, trusting Marcus, trusting the system. There it is. Ethan circled us slowly. That moment when you realize everyone's been lying to you, even your white knight here. Lily's chair creaked as she worked at her restraints. Through the windows, distant sirens wailed. Too far away, too late. But I'll make you a deal. Ethan set my research notebook on a nearby bench. Give me access to Project Eclipse's complete data, and this stays buried. Your sister keeps her career. Marcus might even survive. and those families never learn the truth. Don't, Marcus coughed, blood staining his lips. Project Eclipse. It's not what you think. Ethan's phone chimed. He glanced at it, his composure cracking slightly. Time's running out, honey. The board's emergency meeting starts in 20 minutes. Once those documents hit their inbox. A crash from the hallway made us all jump. Footsteps approached. Heavy, multiple sets. That'll be my associates, Ethan said. Less understanding than me, I'm afraid. Last chance. My hands were slick with Marcus's blood as I helped him sit up. The access codes, he whispered. Don't. Shut up. Ethan kicked him hard. You've manipulated her enough. The footsteps grew closer. Through the laboratory's glass walls, shadows moved in the corridor. I trusted you, I told Marcus, my voice breaking. All those patients. The real data, he gasped. Safety deposit box. Explains everything. Ethan checked his watch. 10 seconds, Layla. Choose. Lily had worked the duct tape loose enough to speak. He's bluffing, she said. The email he showed you. Check the timestamp. I lunged for Ethan's discarded phone, but he was faster. The screen shattered as he smashed it against the floor. Wrong choice. He nodded toward the door as 3 men in tactical gear entered. Take care of them. Make it look like a lab accident. Wait. I stepped forward, hands raised. The backup server. In the basement. I can give you everything. Ethan studied my face, searching for deception. You're lying. Check my keycard access logs. Why do you think I came here? The men looked to Ethan for instructions. In that moment of hesitation, Lily's chair finally toppled. She rolled free, kicking the notebook into a puddle of spilled chemicals. The laboratory erupted into chaos. As Ethan lunged for the notebook, I grabbed for his phone's remains. Marcus slumped against me, his breathing shallow. Kill them all, Ethan ordered, but his voice held a new edge. Desperation. The tactical team raised their weapons. Through the broken phone screen, I saw the email timestamp Lily had noticed. It was dated next week. He's using you, I told them. Project Eclipse isn't what he promised. Shoot them, Ethan screamed. But the men hesitated, looking at each other. In their moment of uncertainty, distant voices echoed through the building. Police, finally arriving. Ethan pulled out a gun. Fine, I'll do it myself. The shot echoed like thunder. Marcus slumped in my arms, no longer breathing. Lily screamed. And something inside me, the last trace of the woman who had once loved this monster, died with Marcus. I looked up at my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time. You want to know about Project Eclipse? Follow me. As I led them toward the basement, Ethan's gun pressed against my back. I realized there was no going back. Whatever happened next would destroy us all. And maybe that was exactly what we deserved. The basement's emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows. Ethan's gun pressed between my shoulder blades as we descended, his mercenaries flanking us. Above, police sirens grew louder, but we all knew they'd be too late. The server room's through here, I said, swiping my keycard. Nothing happened. I tried again. Stop stalling. Ethan's voice had lost its smooth charm, revealing something rawer beneath. You really think I didn't disable your access? Then shoot me. I turned to face him. Because that's the only way you're getting what you want. His laugh echoed off concrete walls. Always so dramatic. Like when you threatened to expose the trial deaths. But you didn't, did you? Because deep down, you're just like me. A door slammed somewhere above us. The mercenaries exchanged glances. Sir, one said, we need to move. Ethan pulled out his phone, showing me the screen. A video feed of the upstairs lab. Lily still there, now with a guard standing over her. Last chance, honey. The real Project Eclipse data, or your sister joins Marcus. I took a step closer, close enough to smell his cologne, the same scent I'd once found so intoxicating. You want to know the truth about Project Eclipse? His eyes narrowed. The backup server doesn't exist. I smiled, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. But the safety deposit box does. The one Marcus mentioned. I visited it this morning. The first flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Behind him, one of the mercenaries touched his earpiece, listening to something. You were so focused on the trial data, I continued. You never asked why Marcus kept protecting me. Why he really hired me all those years ago. Sir, the mercenary interrupted, we've got movement on multiple floors. Shut up! Ethan's composure cracked further. What are you talking about? Project Eclipse wasn't about the drug trials. It was about identifying corporate spies. Like the ones who killed Marcus's wife 5 years ago. The ones you're working for. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by fear. You're lying. Check your phone again. That video feed of Lily. It's a loop from 20 minutes ago. He glanced down. In that moment, I moved. The gun went off, the shot deafening in the confined space. But I was already rolling, my hand finding the emergency alarm panel Marcus had shown me months ago. The sprinklers activated, but instead of water, chemical foam poured down. The mercenaries' equipment sparked and died. Clear. Sophie's voice echoed from the stairwell as she led a tactical team in. The real one, the one Marcus had arranged before everything went wrong. Ethan lunged for me, but slipped in the foam. His gun clattered away. You don't understand, he gasped. They'll kill me. Like you killed Marcus? Like you killed those other wives? He reached for something in his jacket. I didn't hesitate. The syringe I'd palmed from the upstairs lab found his neck, just like he'd planned for me. What? His eyes widened as recognition hit. The trial drug, a dose large enough to show every side effect you helped cover up. I watched him slump against the wall. Don't worry, you'll live, long enough to experience everything those patients did. The tactical team secured the mercenaries. Sophie appeared beside me, helping me up. Lily's safe. The real Project Eclipse data is already with the FBI. And the board meeting, streaming live. They've seen everything, including Ethan's real identity and his connection to the corporate espionage ring. I looked down at my husband, the man I'd loved, the monster I'd married. He stared back, his handsome features already showing the first signs of the drug's effects. You were right, I told him softly. I am just like you. The difference is, I chose justice over revenge. As they led him away, his screams echoing through the basement, I felt no satisfaction. Only a hollow emptiness where love had once lived. Sophie touched my arm. Marcus left something for you, in case things went wrong. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a single note. Project Eclipse was never about the data. It was about finding someone strong enough to finish what my wife started. Thank you. The sirens grew closer as we climbed the stairs, leaving the basement and its secrets behind. But the echoes of what happened there would haunt us all forever. Some vengeance, I realized, comes not from what we do to others, but from what we force them to face in themselves. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me as I approached Ethan's room. Through the observation window, I watched him thrash against his restraints, his once handsome face contorted by the drug's effects, the same effects he'd helped hide from those trial patients. Dr. Simmons stood beside me, reviewing his charts. The symptoms will persist for months, every one of them documented now, impossible to deny. And the others? I asked. His previous wives? 2 have been found alive, in witness protection. She hesitated. The 3rd? I turned away from the window. I don't want to know. The click of heels announced Sophie's arrival. The board just finished reviewing Marcus's complete files. Everything about Project Eclipse, the corporate espionage ring, even records of his wife's murder. He'd documented it all. He knew, I said softly, from the moment Ethan started working there, and he chose you to finish it. Sophie handed me a USB drive. This was in his safety deposit box, along with a letter for you. Through the window, Ethan's eyes found mine. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd loved, or thought I'd loved. Then his face twisted in another spasm of pain. The FBI wants your statement, Sophie continued, about the trial cover-ups. I'll give them everything. I pocketed the drive without looking at it. The patients' families deserve to know the truth. A commotion down the hall drew our attention. Lily appeared, accompanied by 2 federal agents. They found Tom, she said. He's agreed to testify about Ethan's network. I watched my sister, noting how she held herself differently now, stronger, more assured. We all carried scars from this, but maybe they'd made us harder to break. Mrs. Harrison, a nurse approached. He's asking for you. Inside the room, the restraints creaked as Ethan struggled to sit up. Come to enjoy the show? His voice was raspy, barely recognizable. No. I stayed by the door. I came to return something. I placed our wedding ring on his bedside table. He stared at it, then laughed, a horrible broken sound. Still so righteous. But we both know the truth. You enjoyed it, didn't you? Watching me suffer? That makes you just like... No, I cut him off. It makes me nothing like you, because I'm walking away. His laughter stopped. They'll never believe you about the trials. You signed off on them too. Maybe, but unlike you, I can live with the consequences of my choices. As I turned to leave, he called out, I did love you, you know, in my way. I paused at the door. That's the difference between justice and revenge, Ethan. Justice doesn't care if you loved me. Outside, Lily and Sophie waited. Behind them, through the hospital windows, the sun was setting over the city. Marcus's letter burned in my pocket, still unopened. What now? Lily asked. I watched a young couple pass by, their hands intertwined, faces bright with trust and possibility. Once, that had been me, but the woman I was then died in that basement, alongside the lies she'd built her life around. Now, I said, we tell the truth, all of it. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Simmons. Found something in Ethan's original medical records. We need to talk. I deleted it without reading further. Some truths could wait. Some secrets deserve to stay buried, at least for now. You're not going to look at the drive, are you? Sophie asked as we walked away. Marcus knew what he was doing, I replied. Whatever's on it, that's tomorrow's battle. The hospital doors slid open, releasing us into the evening air. Somewhere in the city, federal agents were unraveling Ethan's network. Families were finally learning the truth about their loved ones' deaths. And in a quiet cemetery, Marcus's wife's case was being reopened. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't a single act of revenge. It was a chain of consequences, each link forged by our choices, our secrets, our lies. And sometimes, the hardest part wasn't achieving it, but living with what it revealed about ourselves. I felt the weight of Marcus's letter, the mystery of the drive, the unread message from Dr. Simmons, tomorrow's battles, tomorrow's truths. For now, this was enough. Walking away, letting the echoes of vengeance fade into something quieter, something that felt almost like peace. Almost. The trunk of our Mercedes clicked shut with a hollow thud. Daniel tossed the last suitcase in while I buckled Mia into her car seat, both of us eager to head home after a long weekend at his parents' lake house. The late afternoon sun cast strange shadows across the driveway, making everything feel slightly off-kilter. Ready for the drive home, sweetie? I asked, adjusting Mia's favorite stuffed rabbit in her lap. She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on something behind me. I'd noticed she'd been unusually quiet all afternoon, barely touching her lunch and keeping to herself while the adults packed up. At 6, she was typically a chatterbox, but today felt different. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, checking his phone before starting the engine. 3 hours till home. Everyone good? I settled into the passenger seat, already dreading the long drive. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way Daniel kept checking his rearview mirror, or how his knuckles seemed whiter than usual on the steering wheel. The first hour passed in relative silence, broken only by the soft hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional ping from Daniel's phone. I pretended to read on mine, but really, I was watching him from the corner of my eye. His jaw clenched every time his phone lit up, and he'd shift slightly in his seat, as if trying to angle the screen away from me. Elizabeth, Mia's small voice came from the back seat, barely above a whisper. The girl in the trunk is asking to be let out. The car swerved slightly. Daniel's hands jerked on the wheel, and I grabbed the door handle, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. "What did you say, honey?" I turned to look at her, trying to keep my voice steady. Mia's face was dead serious, her brown eyes wide and unblinking. "The girl in the trunk, she wants out, she's scared." Daniel let out a forced laugh. "Sweetheart, there's nobody in the trunk, just our bags." But his voice cracked on the last word, and I noticed a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. The air in the car felt thick, almost suffocating. "Pull over," I said. "Don't be ridiculous, Elizabeth. It's just her imagination." "Pull over, Daniel. Now." He kept driving, his speed increasing slightly. "We're already running late, and—" I said pull over. My voice came out sharper than I intended, making Mia flinch in her seat. Daniel's jaw worked back and forth, but he gradually eased the car onto the shoulder of the highway. Before he could fully stop, I was already unbuckling my seatbelt. "Stay in the car with Mia," I ordered, stepping out into the cooling evening air. My hands trembled as I walked to the back of the car. Daniel got out too, following close behind me. "This is absurd," he said, but there was an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "You're scaring Mia with this nonsense." I reached for the trunk release, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight enough to hurt. "Let go of me," I said quietly, meeting his eyes. In that moment, I saw something there that made my blood run cold. Fear, guilt, desperation. He released my wrist slowly. Taking a step back, "Elizabeth, please, let's just get home." I pressed the button. The trunk popped open with a soft click. Bags. Just bags, like he said. But as I moved aside his golf clubs, I noticed something that made my stomach lurch. A woman's scarf, silk, in a shade of purple I'd never wear. And beneath it, a business card for the Grand Hotel downtown, room 412, written on the back in unfamiliar handwriting. "It's not what you think," Daniel said behind me, but I barely heard him over the roaring in my ears. From the backseat window, Mia watched us with those knowing eyes, and I realized this was just the beginning of something much darker than I could have imagined. That purple scarf haunted my dreams for 3 nights straight. I'd wake up in cold sweats, my fingers clutching at phantom silk, while Daniel slept soundly beside me, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I stood at our kitchen counter, mechanically packing Mia's lunch while watching Daniel through the window. He was on another early morning call, pacing the backyard in his tailored suit, gesturing with one hand while the other pressed his phone tight against his ear. Even from here, I could see the smile that never used to appear during work calls. "Is Daddy going away again?" Mia asked, her small hands wrapped around a glass of orange juice. I forced my fingers to relax their grip on the sandwich I was making. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" "He has his special cologne on, the one for important meetings." My stomach clenched. I'd noticed that too. The expensive new fragrance he'd started wearing 6 months ago, right after his promotion. The one that sometimes clung to his shirts, even after they'd been washed. "Mommy?" Mia's voice pulled me back. "The lady in the trunk is sorry." The knife I was holding clattered against the counter. "What lady, Mia? What do you mean?" But Daniel chose that moment to stride back in, ending his call with a laugh that sounded nothing like him. "Ready for school, princess?" Mia's face closed off, something I'd never seen before our weekend trip. She nodded silently and slipped off her chair. "I'll take her today," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "You have that big presentation, right?" Daniel's smile flickered. "Actually, I moved that to next week, heading to the downtown office for some meetings instead." Room 412 flashed through my mind. "Downtown? Which clients?" "Just internal stuff. Budget reviews, nothing exciting." He kissed my cheek, but his lips barely grazed my skin. Don't wait up tonight. Dinner with the team. As he headed for the door, I noticed his overnight bag by the coat rack. The same one from our weekend trip, still unpacked. Daniel? He paused, hand on the doorknob. You forgot to unpack from the weekend. Want me to do it? His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. No need. I'll handle it later. After he left, I waited exactly 17 minutes before approaching the bag. My hands trembled as I unzipped it, but instead of evidence, I found nothing but his usual weekend clothes, neatly folded. Too neatly. Daniel had never folded anything in his life. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Coffee, you've been MIA since the weekend. 20 minutes later, I sat across from my best friend at our usual cafe, watching her face as I recounted everything. Mia's strange comments, the scarf, the hotel card, Daniel's behavior. Jesus, Elizabeth. Rachel set down her cup. Have you checked his phone? Credit card statements? Not yet. I'm afraid of what I'll find. Or afraid you won't find anything and you'll feel crazy. She leaned forward. Listen, I've known you both for 15 years. Daniel's changed since that promotion. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden business trips, the perfume, I added quietly. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. What perfume? Sometimes, when he hugs me goodbye, there's this faint scent. Floral, expensive, not mine. Sophie, Rachel said, then immediately pressed her lips together. My blood ran cold. What did you say? Nothing, Rachel. She sighed, reaching across the table to grab my hand. Sophie Turner. She's the new VP of marketing at Daniel's company. They've been working closely on some big campaign. How do you know this? Tom mentioned it at dinner last week. Said Daniel and Sophie have been pulling all-nighters at the office, really impressing the board with their dedication. I pulled my hand away, feeling sick. All-nighters. Elizabeth, maybe it's not. She's 30, I cut in. Young, ambitious, probably beautiful. You don't know anything for sure. But I did know. I knew it in the way Mia looked at her father now, in the careful distance Daniel kept between us, in the purple silk that felt like a noose around my throat. I need to go, I said, standing abruptly. Mia's school lets out early today. Rachel grabbed my arm. Don't do anything rash. I smiled, and something in my expression made her let go. I won't. I'm just going to start paying very close attention. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app Daniel thought I never used. Time to see exactly what kind of meetings he'd been having downtown. The credit card statements painted a picture I couldn't unsee. Grand Hotel downtown twice a week for the past 4 months. Restaurant charges for 2 at places Daniel claimed were business meetings. A jewelry store receipt from last month. No gift had ever made its way to me. I sat in my parked car outside his office building, watching the evening crowd filter out. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Mia's words from that morning echoed in my head. The lady says she's going to take Daddy away. A flash of purple caught my eye. A woman emerged from the revolving doors, her dark hair falling in perfect waves. Young, beautiful, exactly as I'd imagined. Sophie. She paused on the steps, checking her phone with a slight smile. The same smile I'd seen in Daniel's recent photos, always cropped just enough to hide her face. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Working late again, don't wait up. 3 minutes later, he walked out, adjusting his tie. They didn't leave together. She went left, he went right. But I knew where they'd end up. I followed his car, keeping 3 vehicles between us. The familiar route to the Grand Hotel made my stomach churn. As he pulled into the parking garage, I drove past, circling the block once before parking across the street. Room 412. Their regular room, according to the hotel charges. I sat there, watching the building's gleaming facade, wondering how many other wives had done the same. My phone buzzed again. Rachel, did you find anything? I started typing a response when movement caught my eye. Sophie entering the hotel lobby, that purple scarf trailing behind her like a flag of victory. 5 minutes later, Daniel followed. Something snapped inside me. Before I could think, I was crossing the street, walking into the lobby with purpose. The young man at the front desk smiled professionally. "I'm here to surprise my husband," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "Daniel Martin. He's meeting a colleague in room 412. The clerk hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't." "Please," I cut in, pulling out my driver's license. "I'm Elizabeth Martin. It's our anniversary." His face softened with sympathy. He probably saw this more often than he'd admit. 4th floor, end of the hall on the right. The elevator ride felt eternal. Each floor brought a new memory. Our wedding day, Mia's birth, family vacations, all tainted now by purple silk in room 412. I stood outside their door, hand raised to knock, when I heard laughter. Her laughter. Then Daniel's voice, lower than usual, saying something that made her giggle again. My phone buzzed. "Mia's babysitter. Mia's asking for you. She seems upset." Reality crashed back. What was I doing here? What did I expect to accomplish by confronting them? This wasn't about catching them in the act. This was about something much bigger. I backed away from the door, my heels silent on the plush carpet. In the elevator, I caught my reflection, pale, shaking, but somehow stronger than I'd felt in months. Back home, I found Mia sitting on the stairs, waiting. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes too knowing for a 6-year-old. "The lady in purple is mean," she said simply. "She wants to hurt us." I sat beside her, pulling her close. "No one's going to hurt us, sweetheart. But I need you to tell me everything you know about the lady, everything you've seen." Mia's small hand found mine. "She comes in dreams, shows me things, bad things that haven't happened yet." "What kind of things?" "Daddy crying, you being angry, a car crash." She paused, looking up at me. "But we can change it, Mommy. The lady in the trunk told me so." I kissed her forehead, my mind racing. "We will, baby. We'll change everything." That night, after putting Mia to bed, I opened my laptop and began to plan. Daniel thought he was being careful with his secret meetings and hidden expenses, but he'd forgotten one thing. I used to work in corporate investigations before Mia was born. And now, watching him sleep peacefully beside me, I realized it was time to put those skills to use again. The purple scarf was just the beginning. By the time I was done, room 412 would be the least of their worries. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket as I walked through the corporate lobby. My old investigator's badge, carefully preserved from my previous career, drew barely a glance from security. Amazing how a confident walk and professional attire could open so many doors. "Elizabeth?" A familiar voice stopped me near the elevators. Rachel stood there, clutching a portfolio, her face pale. "What are you doing here?" "Surprising Daniel for lunch," I lied smoothly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She glanced around nervously. "We need to talk, not here." 10 minutes later, we sat in her car in the underground parking garage. Rachel's hands trembled as she pulled out a folder. "I wasn't sure whether to tell you," she started, "but after what you shared about Sophie," she handed me the folder. "Tom's firm handles the company's legal affairs. These documents weren't supposed to leave the office. Inside were transfer papers. Daniel's signature appeared multiple times, moving substantial sums to offshore accounts. Sophie's name was there too, listed as a co-beneficiary. "There's more," Rachel whispered. "They're planning to leave the country, next month. Together." My chest tightened. Mia's words about the car crash flashed through my mind. "Elizabeth?" Rachel touched my arm. "What are you going to do?" I slipped the folder into my bag. "Nothing yet. I need to get upstairs." "To do what?" "What I came here for." I pulled out my old badge. Sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. The executive floor was quiet when I reached it. Daniel's office door stood slightly ajar, his voice drifting out as he conducted a video call. I slipped past, heading for Sophie's office at the end of the hall. Her computer password took 3 attempts. Her birth date, according to the HR files I'd accessed earlier. Amateur. Within minutes, I'd plugged in the USB drive, downloading everything. Emails, financial records, private photos. A shadow fell across the desk. "Can I help you?" Sophie's voice was exactly as I'd imagined, smooth, confident, young. I turned slowly, smiling professionally. "Just IT support. Routine security update." She stepped closer, her purple blazer immaculate. "Funny, I don't remember requesting any updates." "Your husband did," I said quietly, watching her face. "Daniel Martin? Or did you think I wouldn't find out?" The color drained from her face. "I don't know what I'm talking about." I stood, pocketing the USB drive. "The Grand Hotel might disagree. Room 412 has quite a view, doesn't it?" Her composure cracked. "Listen, I can explain." "To who?" "The board, the SEC. I have enough evidence of financial fraud to bury both of you." "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, playing a recording, Daniel's voice discussing their escape plans, captured by the bug I'd planted in his car last week. "My daughter," I said softly, "keeps having visions of a car crash. Funny how children sometimes know things before they happen." Sophie's hand trembled as she reached for her desk phone. "I wouldn't," I warned, "unless you want these files sent to every board member right now. One click." I held up my phone. "Your choice." The phone clattered back into its cradle. "Smart girl." I moved toward the door. "Oh, and Sophie, purple isn't your color." Back in my car, my hands finally started shaking. Rachel's text lit up my phone. "Daniel's looking for you, says it's urgent." Another message popped up, from our babysitter. "Mia won't stop crying. Keeps saying something bad is coming." I started the engine, my mind racing. The evidence I'd gathered would destroy them both professionally. But Mia's warnings about the crash haunted me. Was I pushing too far? Or not far enough? My phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, then played his message. "Elizabeth, we need to talk. I know you were in the building today. Whatever you think you know, please just come home. We can fix this." Fix this, as if our marriage was just another business deal he could negotiate. I pulled out of the parking garage into the rain, heading for Mia's school. Behind me, a car engine revved aggressively. In my rearview mirror, I caught a flash of purple. Sophie's car, gaining speed. Mia's voice echoed in my head. "A car crash. But we can change it, Mummy." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, watching Sophie's car weave through traffic toward me. Time to find out if my daughter's visions could really be changed. The call came during Mia's ballet class. My mother had collapsed at the grocery store. Massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, she was gone. Just like that, as if the universe needed to pile on one more cruel joke. I stood in the hospital corridor, my phone buzzing with Daniel's messages. "In a meeting, can't get away, handle the arrangements." Handle the arrangements. Like it was just another task on his to-do list. Mia sat in the plastic chair beside me, her ballet tutu still on, small fingers tracing patterns on the armrest. "Grandma says she's sorry she didn't warn us." My head snapped up. "What did you say?" "She's here." Mia pointed to the empty chair across from us. "She says to check her garden shed. There's something you need to see." That night, after leaving Mia with Rachel, I drove to my mother's house. The garden shed's key was where it had always been, under a ceramic frog. Inside, beneath gardening tools and old flower pots, I found a locked metal box. The combination was my birthday. Mom had always been sentimental that way. Inside were letters, dozens of them, recent ones, all addressed to me, never sent. As I read, my hands began to shake. "Elizabeth, I've seen him with her, the young woman in purple. I didn't know how to tell you. He reminds me so much of your father before he left. The last letter was dated 3 days ago. I confronted him today. He laughed it off, but there was something in his eyes that scared me. Be careful, sweetheart. People who hide secrets that deep can be dangerous when cornered." My phone lit up. Daniel again. "Where are you? We need to talk about the funeral arrangements." I texted back, "Mom's house, cleaning out some things." His response came quickly. Stay there, coming to help. 2. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the shed window. I heard car doors, plural. Voices drifted through the evening air. Are you sure she knows? Sophie's voice. The way she looked at me today. We need those letters. Daniel's reply sent ice through my veins. They knew. Somehow, they knew about Mom's letters. Had they been watching her too? I slipped the letters into my jacket and moved deeper into the shed's shadows. Through a crack in the door, I watched them approach the house. Daniel tried his key. The one Mom had asked him to return months ago, claiming she'd lost it. Check the garden, he ordered Sophie. Her mother was always puttering around out here. Sophie's heels clicked on the path, getting closer to the shed. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. The doorknob turned. A child's voice cut through the darkness. Daddy? Why are you at Grandma's house? Mia stood in the garden, still in her ballet clothes. Rachel stood behind her, arms crossed. I thought you were handling the funeral arrangements, Rachel said, her voice sharp with accusation. Daniel stepped away from the house. We were just... We? Rachel's eyebrows rose as Sophie emerged from behind a hedge. The lady in purple, Mia said clearly. The one from the trunk. Grandma says she's dangerous. Sophie's face went white. What is she talking about? I pushed open the shed door, letters clutched to my chest. She's talking about you, Sophie, you and Daniel, and how you both knew my mother was on to you. Daniel moved toward me, hands raised. Elizabeth, whatever you think. She had a heart attack right after confronting you. My voice cracked. What did you say to her, Daniel? What did you do? Nothing. It was just a coincidence. Like the offshore accounts, the escape plans, the convenient timing of her death. Sophie backed away, her purple blazer luminous in the gathering dark. Daniel, you said this would be simple. Simple? I laughed, and the sound frightened even me. Was that before or after you decided my mother needed to be silenced? Mia tugged at Rachel's hand. The lady in the trunk is crying now. She says she's sorry. Stop saying that. Sophie's composure shattered. There was never anyone in any trunk. But Mia just stared at her, those knowing eyes seeing right through to whatever truth lay buried beneath Sophie's perfect facade. I pulled out my phone, finger hovering over a number. The police would be very interested in these letters, and the financial records, and maybe a toxicology report on my mother. Daniel lunged for the phone. In the chaos that followed, I heard Mia scream, not in fear but in warning, and suddenly I understood what she'd been trying to tell me all along. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. The toxicology report arrived 3 days after Mom's funeral. Daniel hadn't bothered to attend, claimed he was stuck in meetings. Sophie had sent flowers, though, purple orchids. The irony wasn't lost on me. Traces of digitalis, the medical examiner said over the phone. Foxglove, common garden plant, but lethal in the right dose. Could be accidental. But we both knew it wasn't. Mom's garden didn't have foxglove, never had. I sat in my car outside the Grand Hotel, watching the entrance through a haze of exhaustion. 3 nights of surveillance had revealed their pattern, every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. Room 412. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Police called. They're closing the investigation, natural causes. Of course they were. Daniel's company had half the city's officials in their pocket. Another message popped up from the babysitter. Mia's fever's getting worse. Should I take her to the hospital? My hand trembled on the steering wheel. Mia had been sick since the confrontation at Mom's house. The doctors couldn't explain it, but she kept talking about the lady in the trunk, now more than ever. Sophie's car pulled into the parking garage. 10 minutes later, Daniel's followed. Like a well-rehearsed dance. I pulled out the USB drive containing everything. The financial records, Mom's letters, the toxicology report, surveillance photos. One email to the board of directors would destroy them both. My finger hovered over the send button when a tap on my window made me jump. Mrs. Martin? A man in a suit stood there, badge visible. Detective Collins? Mind stepping out of the car? 2 more officers approached from behind. A setup. Elizabeth Martin, you're under investigation for corporate espionage and cyberstalking. We have a warrant to search your vehicle. Let me guess, I said, stepping out. Daniel's lawyers called? The detective's face remained impassive. We received evidence of unauthorized access to private corporate files and concerning behavior following your mother's death. They found the surveillance equipment in my trunk, the photos, the USB drive, everything I'd gathered over weeks of careful planning, gone in minutes. Your daughter's quite imaginative, Detective Collins said, examining my phone. All these notes about someone in trunks. Your husband's concerned about her mental state, and yours. He killed my mother, I whispered. Your mother died of natural causes, Mrs. Martin. The medical examiner confirmed it. He paused. Though your recent internet searches about digitalis are interesting. My blood ran cold. They'd twisted everything around, made me look like the unstable one, the threat. My phone rang. The babysitter again. Mia's asking for you. She's crying about the lady in purple hurting someone else. I need to go, I said. My daughter's sick. Of course. Detective Collins smiled without warmth. But first, we'll need you to come down to the station, just to clear a few things up. 3 hours of questioning later, they released me with a warning and a temporary restraining order. I couldn't go near Daniel, Sophie, or their officers. Any evidence I had was now part of an ongoing investigation. I rushed to Rachel's house, where she'd taken Mia after the babysitter called. She's sleeping, Rachel whispered, leading me to the guest room. But Elizabeth, there's something else. She handed me her tablet. On the screen was an article from 6 years ago. Young woman's disappearance remains unsolved. The photo showed a girl in her 20s, another of Daniel's employees, another affair exposed. She vanished after threatening to go public, Rachel said quietly. They found her car at a train station. Case went cold. The girl in the trunk, I breathed. Elizabeth. Rachel gripped my arm. What if Mia isn't just imagining things? What if she's trying to warn us? In the guest room, Mia stirred in her fever sleep. Mommy, she murmured, the lady says we're running out of time. I touched her burning forehead, remembering Mom's last letter. People who hide secrets that deep can be dangerous when cornered. My phone lit up with a final message from Daniel. It's over, Elizabeth. Don't make this worse than it already is. But as I watched Mia toss in her troubled sleep, I realized it was far from over. I'd been playing their game, surveillance, evidence, legal channels. But they'd already rigged those rules. Time to make some new ones. The Mercedes purred along the coastal highway, Daniel behind the wheel, thinking this was his idea. A reconciliation drive, he'd called it. Just the three of us, like old times. Mia sat in her car seat, unusually quiet, watching the sunset paint the ocean blood red. I kept my hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my pocket, the one copy the police hadn't found. You've been reasonable about everything, Daniel said, breaking the silence. The restraining order, the investigation, I appreciate that. I smiled, remembering the missing girl's photo. Tell me about Jessica Porter. His hands tightened on the wheel. Who? The girl who disappeared 6 years ago, your previous assistant. Ancient history, he muttered. Office gossip. The lady says she's cold, Mia whispered from the back seat. She's always cold now. Daniel's face went ash white. Stop it, Mia. Stop saying things like that. Pull over, I said quietly. Elizabeth, pull over or I send these files to every board member right now. I held up my phone, including the ones about Jessica. He guided the car into a scenic overlook, empty except for one other vehicle, Sophie's purple BMW. You planned this, he accused, like you planned Mom's garden visit. His laugh was hollow. You can't prove anything. The trunk, Daddy, Mia said. She wants out of the trunk. Daniel's composure cracked. Shut up. Just shut up. Sophie emerged from her car, wearing that familiar purple blazer. Daniel, what's going on? I stepped out of the Mercedes, USB drive in hand. Show her, Daniel. Show her what happened to the last one who threatened to expose you. He said you disappeared, Sophie said slowly. Took a settlement, moved abroad. Jessica Porter never left the country, I said. Did she, Daniel? His face twisted. You've lost your mind. All this conspiracy nonsense. The lady says check the trunk, Mia interrupted. Her trunk, Daddy. The one you locked. Sophie's eyes widened. What trunk? His storage unit, I said. The one he rented 6 years ago, paid in cash. I found the receipt in Mom's letters. Sophie backed away from Daniel. What did you do? Nothing. They're crazy, both of them. But his voice shook. I held up my phone again. The police are on their way. Real police this time, not your bought friends. They're reopening Jessica's case. Daniel lunged for my phone. I sidestepped, but he grabbed my arm, spinning me toward the cliff's edge. Sophie screamed. Then Mia's voice cut through everything. The lady says now, Mummy. Open it now. I pressed send. Daniel's phone buzzed, then Sophie's, then every device within range as the emergency alert went out. Missing person update, Jessica Porter. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel's grip loosened. You can't prove anything, he whispered, but his eyes darted to Sophie's car. Check her trunk, I told the approaching officers. The purple BMW. He borrowed her car that week, didn't you, Daniel? Sophie fumbled for her keys, hands shaking. No, he wouldn't. The trunk popped open. Later, they'd find traces. DNA. Fibers. Enough to reopen everything. Jessica's disappearance, Mom's death, all of it. But in that moment, as Daniel fell to his knees and Sophie backed away in horror, all I could hear was Mia's soft voice. The lady says thank you, Mommy. She can rest now. Daniel looked up at me, defeated. How? How did you know? You taught me well, I said. About hiding things in plain sight, about using people's weaknesses against them. I touched Mia's shoulder, about underestimating the ones closest to you. The police moved in with handcuffs as the sun finally set, painting everything in shadows. Sophie sobbed against her car, mascara running in purple-black streaks. Was any of it real? I asked Daniel as they led him away. Any of it at all? He stopped, looking back at Mia. She really sees her, doesn't she? In the trunk? She sees everything, Daniel. Everything you tried to hide. As the police cars pulled away, Mia took my hand. The lady's smiling now, Mommy. She's not cold anymore. I squeezed her hand, watching the Mercedes gleam in the twilight. Some trunks, once opened, can never be closed again. But maybe that's how the truth finally gets free. The courtroom emptied slowly after Daniel's sentencing. Life without parole. Justice served in clean, measured words that couldn't begin to capture what he'd done to Jessica Porter, to my mother, to all of us. Sophie had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for immunity. Last I heard, she'd moved across the country, leaving her purple blazers and corporate ambitions behind. I lingered in the wooden pew-like benches, watching Daniel's parents hurry out, unable to meet my eyes. The evidence had been overwhelming. DNA, financial records, witness testimony. But it was Mia's words that had cracked him on the stand. The lady in the trunk forgives you, Daddy. He'd broken down then, confessing everything. How Jessica had threatened to expose their affair and his financial fraud. How one push had led to another. How my mother had figured it out, confronted him with proof. How the foxglove had seemed like his only option. Rachel touched my shoulder. Ready? I nodded, gathering my bag. As we walked out into the autumn sunshine, she hesitated. There's something you should know, she said. About Mia's abilities. I know, I replied. About Mom. Rachel's eyes widened. How? Found her diary last week. She had them too. The visions, the warnings. That's how she knew about Jessica, about Daniel. I smiled faintly. Guess it runs in the family. Elizabeth. Rachel gripped my arm. The police found something else in Sophie's trunk. Recent. My blood ran cold. What? A purple scarf, and digitalis, the same kind that killed Mom. The pieces clicked into place. Sophie wasn't just covering for Daniel. She was learning from him. At home, Mia sat at her little desk drawing. Pictures of women in purple, of trunks and gardens, of secrets finally seeing daylight. "The ladies are quiet now," she said without looking up, "but they say there are others. Other trunks. Other secrets." I picked up one of her drawings. A detailed sketch of a car trunk, a purple scarf, a garden full of foxglove. Evidence that had been there all along, if only we'd known how to see it. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Collins. "Found 3 more cases, similar pattern, different cities. Want to consult?" I looked at Mia, still drawing her truths in crayon and colored pencil. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we help other ladies in trunks?" She nodded, adding a final touch to her artwork, a key drawn in purple, unlocking something dark. That night, I sat in Mom's garden where it had all started. The foxglove was gone now, replaced with roses, red ones, Mia's choice. The garden shed stood empty, its secrets already told. Rachel joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "You know, most people would move away, start fresh. Most people don't have what we have. A gift or a curse." I thought about Daniel in his prison cell, about Sophie somewhere out there, about all the other trunks still waiting to be opened. "Both," I said finally. "Mom knew it. That's why she kept watching, kept digging. Some secrets need to stay buried. Others need someone to let them out," Rachel finished. Inside, Mia's nightlight cast shadows on her bedroom wall, shapes that might have been women dancing, or keys turning, or truth finally breaking free. I touched the scar on my wrist where Daniel had grabbed me that last day on the cliff. It was fading now, like his hold on our lives. But some marks remain, reminding us of what we've survived, what we've learned, what we've become. My phone buzzed again. Another case, another city, another trunk waiting to be opened. I thought of Jessica Porter, finally laid to rest. Of Mom, watching over us through Mia's eyes. Of all the others still waiting for someone to hear their whispers. "The lady says we're ready," Mia called from her room, her voice carrying that familiar certainty. I smiled, picking up my old investigator's badge from the garden table. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about becoming exactly what they feared you'd be. The one who sees their secrets, who hears the whispers, who opens the trunks they thought would stay locked forever. "Yes," I said, watching the roses sway in the evening breeze. "We're ready."
I stared at the roasted chicken growing cold on my pristine white serving platter, watching as tiny droplets of grease congealed around its golden skin. The dinner party was supposed to be perfect. Instead, it became the moment I realized my husband had been slowly killing who I was, one small cut at a time. "Anna here thinks she's quite the chef now that she's left her career to focus on more domestic pursuits," Ryan announced to his boss, Lucas, with that trademark smile that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made my stomach turn. I gripped my wine glass tighter, feeling the stem might snap under the pressure. The red wine trembled slightly, matching the tremor in my hands. "Though I have to say," Ryan continued, winking at Lucas, "maybe she should have stuck to spreadsheets. At least those didn't come out dry." Lucas's wife tittered nervously while Lucas himself shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. The silence that followed felt like a noose around my neck. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I followed your mother's recipe exactly, Ryan. The one you always praise at her house." The look Ryan shot me could have frozen hell. I used to shrink from that look, make myself smaller, apologize for speaking out of turn. "Not tonight." "Speaking of work," Lucas interjected, clearly trying to ease the tension, "Ryan tells me you were in marketing before? At Preston and Mills?" "Senior marketing executive," I corrected, ignoring Ryan's warning cough. "I led their digital transformation campaign. We increased market share by 32% that year." Ryan's knife scraped against his plate with unnecessary force. "Ancient history now. Anna's much happier focusing on our home, aren't you, sweetheart?" 3 years ago, when Ryan had first suggested I quit my job, He'd painted such a pretty picture. We'd have more time together. Start a family. Build our dream life. What he'd really wanted was to clip my wings, keep me dependent, manageable. Oh yes, I smiled, refilling Lucas's wine glass. It's given me so much time to think. To really understand what I want from life. Ryan relaxed slightly, mistaking my words for submission. Poor, predictable Ryan. He never did understand that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that play dead first. The chicken is lovely, Anna, Lucas's wife offered kindly. And this wine pairing is excellent. Thank you, I replied, watching Ryan's jaw clench. He hated when others praised me, especially in front of his boss. I'd been taking some sommelier classes online. Amazing what you can learn when you have the time. Ryan's fork clattered against his plate. Sommelier classes? First I'm hearing of this. Is it? I asked innocently. I must have mentioned it during one of your late nights at the office. With Evelyn. The color drained from Ryan's face. Lucas looked between us, suddenly very interested in his wine glass. I think it's time for dessert, Ryan announced, standing abruptly. Anna, help me in the kitchen? I rose gracefully, following him. As soon as we were out of earshot, he grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. Making conversation with your boss. Isn't that what you wanted? The perfect corporate wife? Don't play games with me, he warned, releasing my arm. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Ryan, I replied softly, reaching past him to grab the dessert plates. I'm just getting started. I returned to the dining room, bearing tiramisu and a smile that felt like warfare. Ryan followed, his confident mask back in place, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Good. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Because tonight wasn't just about a ruined dinner party. It was about the moment I stopped being Ryan Mitchell's perfectly crafted trophy wife and started becoming something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I sat at our kitchen island. 3 separate transfers to an account I didn't recognize, each for exactly $4,000. The dates matched Ryan's late nights at the office. Funny how patterns emerge when you start looking for them. I heard Mia's car pull into the driveway and quickly saved photos of the statement to my phone. My hands were steady now, precise. Like a surgeon preparing for an operation. You look like hell, Mia announced, dropping her designer bag on the counter. She studied my face. What happened after I left the dinner party? Ryan's spending money we don't have, I said, sliding the statement across the marble surface. And I'm pretty sure I know where it's going. Mia scanned the numbers, her perfectly manicured nail tracing the suspicious transfers. Evelyn? Who else? The amount started right after she joined TechWave. That snake, Mia muttered, then caught herself. Sorry, but are you absolutely sure? This is a serious accusation, Anna. I pulled up the company directory on my phone. Notice anything about that account number? It matches the employee ID format TechWave uses. I remember it from when Ryan first started there. Jesus, Mia whispered. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Claire's name flashed across the screen. Anna, darling, my mother-in-law's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. I just had the most interesting lunch with Margaret from Ryan's office. She mentioned seeing him and that lovely Evelyn having quite an intimate dinner at Lou Blanc last week. I thought you should know. My grip tightened on the phone. How thoughtful of you, Claire. Was this during the charity gala I couldn't attend because Ryan said we couldn't afford the tickets? The silence on the other end was delicious. Oh dear, Claire finally managed. Perhaps I shouldn't have. No, you absolutely should have. Thank you, Claire. Really? I ended the call and looked at Mia, who was watching me with concern. You're scary calm right now, she observed. Because I finally understand the game, I replied, opening my laptop. And I'm done playing by his rules. I pulled up my old marketing contacts, fingers flying across the keyboard. 3 years ago, I'd led digital campaigns worth millions. Now I was about to launch the most important campaign of my life. What exactly are you planning? Mia asked, leaning over my shoulder. First, I need income he can't control. Remember Jessica from Preston and Mills? She owns that boutique downtown now. I'm meeting her tomorrow about a part-time position. Anna. Mia's voice held a warning. Then I start documenting everything. The transfers, the receipts, the late nights. Building a case. For divorce? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. For something much more satisfying. My phone buzzed again, a text from Ryan, working late. Don't wait up. I typed back, no problem. Having dinner with your mother anyway. She sends her love. Let him sweat over that one. You know he'll try to destroy you if he catches on, Mia said softly. I closed the laptop and met her worried gaze. He already did that, Mia. 3 years ago, when I let him convince me to give up everything I was to become his perfect little wife. The difference is, back then I helped him do it. And now? Now I'm going to show him exactly what happens when you underestimate the woman you tried to break. I stood up, suddenly energized. Want to help me go through his office? Mia hesitated for only a second before grabbing her bag. I'll take the desk, you take the filing cabinet? As we climbed the stairs to Ryan's home office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, purpose. Every step was taking me closer to reclaiming not just my dignity, but my power. The lock on his office door was child's play. I'd watched him punch in the code countless times while he thought I was focused on being the perfect hostess. Just like I'd watched him slowly dismantle my confidence, my ambitions, my sense of self. Well, Ryan was about to learn that some things, once broken, don't put themselves back together the same way. Sometimes they come back sharper. Deadlier. And I was just getting started. The boutique's bell chimed as another customer left, clutching a designer bag I'd convinced her she couldn't live without. 2 weeks into my part-time hobby, as I'd explained it to Ryan, and I'd already doubled the store's sales. Jessica couldn't stop beaming. Just like old times, she said, counting the day's receipts. You haven't lost your touch. I was about to respond when I heard familiar voices outside. Through the storefront window, I spotted Ryan and Lucas heading toward the coffee shop next door. I ducked behind a display rack, motioning Jessica to silence. The board's getting suspicious, Ryan. Lucas's voice carried through the thin walls. These numbers don't add up, and Evelyn's department shouldn't be showing that kind of profit margin. Trust me, Lucas. Everything's under control. Like those missing development funds were under control? Christ, Ryan, if this gets out. It won't. Ryan's voice hardened. Unless someone's been talking? The conversation faded as they entered the coffee shop, but my hands were already shaking. Not from fear, from possibility. Anna? Jessica touched my arm. You okay? Better than okay, I said, straightening up. Listen, I need to make a call. Cover for me? In the back office, I dialed Claire's number. She answered on the first ring, as expected. Anna. I was just thinking about you. The country club is having their annual charity gala next month, and... Actually, I cut in, I was hoping you could help me with something. Ryan's been so stressed lately, and I want to surprise him with a romantic evening. Could you get his schedule from his assistant? She always loved you. Oh. Claire practically purred at being included in the conspiracy. Of course, darling. Anything to help you two reconnect. If she only knew. An hour later, my phone buzzed with screenshots of Ryan's calendar, including his private meetings with Evelyn. But more importantly, his login credentials for the company system, saved by his ever-helpful assistant. I was reviewing the information when the boutique's bell chimed again. I froze at the sound of Evelyn's voice. This is such a cute shop, she was saying to someone. I need something for a business dinner tonight. The executive team's wives will all be there. I emerged from the back office, clipboard in hand, professional smile fixed in place. Welcome to Vintage Vogue. Can I help you find something? Evelyn turned, recognition flickering across her face before she masked it with polite surprise. Anna? I didn't know you worked here. Just keeping busy, I replied, noting how she shifted her designer purse, the same model I'd seen charged to our joint account last month. Business dinner, you said? How interesting. Ryan didn't mention anything about it. Color touched her cheeks. Oh, it was very last minute. Actually, maybe I should try somewhere else. Nonsense, I said, selecting a red dress from the rack. This would be perfect. The color really makes a statement. The same color as the lipstick stains I'd found on Ryan's collar last week. She took the dress, hesitating. It's beautiful, but... Trust me, I smiled, all teeth. I know exactly what works for these events. The wives can be so judgmental, can't they? Our eyes met in the mirror as she held the dress against herself. For a moment, I saw fear flicker across her face. Good. She should be afraid. After she left, without the dress, I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The login credentials Claire had sent were burning a hole in my pocket. One quick look at the company's financial records would confirm what I'd overheard. But my finger hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't just about catching Ryan anymore. This was about dismantling everything he'd built on lies. And I needed to be smart about it. I dialed Mia instead. Remember that corporate law friend of yours? I asked when she answered. The one who specializes in whistleblower cases? I think it's time we had coffee. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. Ryan thought he was playing chess, carefully positioning his pieces, protecting his king. But he'd forgotten something crucial. In chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. And I was done being a pawn. The USB drive felt heavy in my palm as I sat across from Sarah Chen, Mia's corporate lawyer friend, in her downtown office. Through the wall-to-wall windows, I could see TechWave's building looming in the distance, a glass monument to my husband's lies. These financial records, Sarah said, scrolling through her laptop, they're definitely irregular. But proving Ryan's involvement will be tricky. He's covered his tracks well. I pulled out my phone, played the recording from the coffee shop. Lucas's voice filled the room. These numbers don't add up, and Evelyn's department shouldn't be showing that kind of profit margin. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. That's better. But we still need. My phone buzzed. Claire's name flashed on the screen. Anna, darling, she burst out before I could speak. The most wonderful news. Ryan's planning to announce his promotion at the charity gala next month. Lucas told me himself. My blood ran cold. Promotion? To Chief Financial Officer. Can you believe it? Though I suppose with poor Marcus's heart attack. The rest of her words faded into white noise. Marcus Thompson. TechWave's current CFO. The only person who could have spotted the financial irregularities. Claire, I interrupted, when did Marcus have his heart attack? Just yesterday. Such terrible timing, right before the audit he was planning. Ryan says he'll handle everything now, of course. I ended the call, my hands shaking. We need to move faster, I told Sarah. Ryan's about to destroy evidence. Sarah leaned forward. Anna, slow down. If we rush this. He gave his CFO a heart attack. You can't prove that. Yet. I stood up, gathering my things. But I know someone who can help. An hour later, I was back at the boutique, watching Evelyn try on dresses for the charity gala. She'd been coming in regularly, perhaps hoping to run into me, perhaps seeking absolution. The blue one, I suggested, noting how she startled at my voice. It matches your eyes. Though I hope you didn't charge it to the same account as the last 3 dresses. She froze, half-zipped. I don't know what you mean. $4,000. 3 times. To your employee account. I stepped closer, adjusting her zipper with deliberate care. The same account that received a substantial bonus right before Marcus Thompson's unfortunate accident. Her face went ash-white. How did you? I was a marketing executive, Evelyn. Numbers tell stories. And yours is particularly interesting. I smoothed the fabric across her shoulders, our eyes meeting in the mirror. Especially the part where Ryan convinced you to help him hide the missing development funds. He said it was temporary, she whispered. Just until the audit. And now there won't be an audit. Convenient, isn't it? She turned to face me, tears threatening. I never meant. I didn't know about Marcus. But you suspected. I handed her a tissue. Help me stop him, Evelyn. Before someone else gets hurt. He'll destroy me. No, I said softly. He'll try. But I won't let him. Neither will Sarah Chen from Morrison and Associates. I placed her card on the dressing room bench. Your choice. That evening, I prepared dinner as usual, listening to Ryan boast about his upcoming promotion. Each word was a knife in my gut, knowing what he'd done to achieve it. We should celebrate, I suggested, pouring his wine. Maybe invite Lucas and his wife over? Actually, Ryan paused, studying my face. I was thinking just the 2 of us. We've been distant lately. Maybe it's time to focus on us again. I met his gaze, saw the calculation behind his charm. He was worried, trying to secure his home base before making his final move at work. That sounds perfect, I lied, raising my glass. To new beginnings. He smiled, relief evident in his shoulders. Poor Ryan. He still thought he was the one in control. My phone vibrated silently in my pocket, a text from Sarah, Evelyn's in. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. I took another sip of wine, hiding my smile. The pieces were falling into place, and Ryan had no idea he was about to lose everything he'd built on other people's destruction. Starting with me. The anonymous email to TechWave's board took 3 minutes to write and 1 second to send. I sat in Sarah's office, watching the delivery confirmation appear on my screen, feeling nothing but a hollow certainty. Last chance to back out, Sarah said, but we both knew I wouldn't. My phone lit up. Ryan's face flashed on the screen. I let it ring. He'll know something's wrong, Sarah warned. He already does. I showed her the text from Evelyn that had arrived an hour ago. Ryan's asking questions about the financial records. He knows someone accessed them. The phone rang again. This time, Lucas's name appeared. I answered, putting it on speaker. Hello? Anna, Lucas's voice was tight. Is Ryan with you? He's not answering his phone, and we've got a situation here. What kind of situation? The board received some concerning information about the development funds and Marcus's audit. A pause. Anna, did you know anything about this? I caught Sarah's warning look. About what, exactly? Never mind. Just, if you see him, tell him to call me immediately. The line went dead. Within seconds, my phone exploded with notifications. Claire was calling. Mia was texting. Even Jessica from the boutique, Ryan was just here looking for you. He seemed angry. We should get you somewhere safe, Sarah started, but I was already standing. No. I need to be home when he arrives. It has to play out right. Anna. I've got the security system recording everything. The police on speed dial. And 3 years of rage keeping me steady. I drove home through streets that felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. The house looked exactly as I'd left it this morning, but everything had changed. Ryan's car wasn't in the driveway, but the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, hearing movement upstairs in his office. Ryan? The shuffling stopped. Then footsteps, heavy and quick, descended the stairs. "Where are the files?" His face was flushed. "Tai askew. The ones you took from my office." "I didn't take anything from your office." "Technically true. I'd copied files, not taken them." "Don't lie to me." He moved closer, that familiar mix of charm and menace radiating off him. "You've been busy, haven't you? Working at the boutique, meeting with lawyers. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Like I found out about Evelyn? Or Marcus?" He laughed, but it was brittle. "You don't know what you're talking about. $4,000, 3 times. To keep her quiet about the missing development funds. Then Marcus starts asking questions, planning an audit, and suddenly has a heart attack." I met his gaze steadily. "Convenient timing. You're being dramatic." But his eyes darted to the stairs, to his office. "I would never. Hurt anyone?" I touched my arm where he'd grabbed me that dinner party night, watching him flinch at the gesture. "We both know that's not true." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face darkening. "The board's calling an emergency meeting. Whatever you think you're doing, Anna, stop it now. You have no idea what you're risking." "Actually, I do. I'm risking everything you built on lies. Your career. Your reputation." I smiled, feeling powerful for the first time in years. "Your perfect little wife." He moved so fast I barely saw it, his hand reaching for my throat. But I was faster, stepping back, my own phone already recording. "Try it," I whispered. "Give me one more reason to destroy you." His hand dropped. For a moment, I saw real fear in his eyes. Then his phone buzzed again, and he backed away, straightening his tie. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "But it will be soon." He left, the door slamming behind him. I waited until his car started before sinking to the floor, hands shaking as I texted Sarah, "It's done." He took the bait. The board meeting tomorrow would reveal everything, the fraud, the harassment, possibly even worse. And Ryan, thinking he could control the narrative, would walk right into it. I touched my throat where his hand had almost reached. The security camera in the corner had caught everything. One more piece of evidence in a case built on years of careful observation. Ryan was right about one thing, it wasn't over. But the ending? That had been written the moment he'd first tried to break me. TechWave's annual charity gala sparkled with false promises and champagne bubbles. I adjusted my black dress, bought with my own money from the boutique, and watched Ryan work the room. He looked confident, but I caught the slight tremor in his hand as he lifted his glass. Quite the turnout. Lucas appeared beside me, his own smile strained. "Though I notice Marcus's wife isn't here." "How is he?" I asked, noting Ryan's attention shifting our way. "Still in intensive care. The doctors found traces of something unexpected in his system." I let that hang in the air between us. Lucas cleared his throat. "The board's beginning their investigation tomorrow. Ryan claims he can explain everything." "I'm sure he does." I smiled as Claire approached, practically vibrating with excitement. "There you are. Ryan's about to make his announcement. Isn't it wonderful?" My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn, he knows. He threatened to implicate me in everything. "I'm sorry, Anna." The room suddenly felt too small. Ryan was ascending the small stage, that practiced charm radiating from every pore. I caught Sarah's eye across the room. She wasn't supposed to be here, but we'd planned for contingencies. "Distinguished colleagues," Ryan began, "family, friends. Before I make tonight's announcement, I want to address some rumors that have been circulating. This wasn't part of the plan." I moved toward the exit, but Claire grabbed my arm. "Your husband's speaking, dear. Don't be rude." "Recent allegations have been made about financial irregularities at TechWave," Ryan continued. "I want to assure everyone that these claims have been thoroughly investigated. He paused, finding me in the crowd. His smile turned predatory. In fact, we've discovered the source of these malicious accusations. Someone who accessed company files illegally, who conspired with others to damage TechWave's reputation. The room went silent. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me. My wife, Anna Mitchell, aided by our former employee Evelyn Parker, has been attempting to manipulate company data to frame innocent parties. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Claire's hand dropped from my arm as if burned. Security footage shows Anna accessing restricted areas. Bank records show suspicious transfers to accounts linked to her new workplace. And sadly, he held up his phone, I have proof of her conspiracy right here. My own words from texts to Evelyn appeared on the screen behind him, carefully edited to remove context. I looked for Sarah, but she had vanished. The board has already been notified, Ryan continued. Criminal charges are being considered. Lucas wouldn't meet my eyes. Claire was already moving away, aligning herself with the winning side. I should have run. Should have denied everything. Instead, I laughed. The sound cut through the murmurs, sharp as broken glass. Ryan faltered. Show them the rest, I said, my voice carrying in the silence. Show them what you did to Marcus when he discovered the truth. Security, Ryan called, but I was already moving forward. Show them the real transfers, Ryan. The ones to Evelyn's account. Show them the footage from our house last night, when you tried to strangle me. She's clearly unstable, Ryan said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Actually, a new voice cut in, I'd like to see that footage. Sarah emerged from the crowd, followed by 2 police officers, and, my heart jumped, Marcus Thompson himself, pale but very much alive in a wheelchair. Impossible, Ryan whispered. You were. In protective custody, Marcus finished. After my doctor found traces of poison in my system. The same poison traced to a purchase on your corporate card. The room erupted in chaos. I watched Ryan's face as his carefully constructed world began to crumble, as security moved toward him rather than me, as his phone buzzed with what I knew would be messages from the board. He looked at me one last time, and I saw the moment he realized, I hadn't just outplayed him, I'd learned from him. Every manipulation, every careful plan, every subtle destruction of someone's life. He'd taught me well. But I'd become a better student than he'd ever imagined. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists, and I felt nothing but hollow victory. The revenge I'd dreamed of tasted like ashes, but at least they were his ashes, not mine. Not anymore. The police station's interview room smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Ryan sat across from me, still in his gala tuxedo, though his bow tie hung loose around his neck. Between us lay the separation papers Sarah had prepared. You really think you've won? His voice was quiet, dangerous. Like the moment before a storm breaks. Sign the papers, Ryan. He leaned forward, those familiar dark eyes searching my face. 3 years of marriage, and I never saw it coming. The dutiful wife, planning my destruction all along. Not all along, I corrected, pushing the papers closer. Just since you started destroying me. A knock interrupted us. Lucas entered, followed by Evelyn. Ryan's face contorted. You brought them into this? They brought themselves. I nodded to Evelyn, who placed a USB drive on the table. Show him. The laptop screen flickered to life. Security footage from Marcus's office played silently, Ryan slipping something into a coffee cup, Marcus collapsing hours later. I kept everything, Evelyn said softly. Every conversation, every transfer, every threat. Insurance, I told myself. But really, I was just a coward. Ryan's laugh was hollow. And now you're what? Growing a conscience? Now I'm choosing a different path, she replied, moving toward the door. Like Anna did. Lucas cleared his throat. The board's decision is final, Ryan. TechWave will be pressing charges. You can't. We already have. Lucas placed another document beside the separation papers. Your resignation, effective immediately. Ryan's hands curled into fists. I recognized the tension in his shoulders, the prelude to violence I'd learned to fear. Everything I did, he hissed, I did for us. For our future. No. I stood, feeling stronger with each word. You did it for yourself. The money, the power, the control, it was always about you. I was just another acquisition. Something to own, to shape, to break. I made you who you are. You tried to unmake me, I corrected. But here's the thing about breaking something, Ryan. Sometimes the pieces come back together sharper. He moved suddenly, lunging across the table. But this time, I didn't flinch. The officers watching through the one-way glass burst in, restraining him as Lucas and Evelyn backed away. You think this is over? Ryan shouted as they pulled him back. You think you can just walk away? I picked up the separation papers, now scattered across the floor. One page had torn right through the signature line where his name should be. Actually, I said, I already have. Your signature is just a formality. Like I was to you. I gathered my things, leaving the torn papers on the table. He could sign them or not, it didn't matter anymore. His world was crumbling either way. At the door, I paused. You know what the difference is between your revenge and mine, Ryan? Yours was about power. Mine was about freedom. Anna, his voice cracked, suddenly vulnerable. The mask finally slipping. Please. We can start over. For a moment, I saw him as he'd been when we first met, charming, ambitious, seemingly perfect. But now I saw through the charm to the hollow core beneath. Goodbye, Ryan. Outside, Mia waited in her car. She didn't ask questions, just drove as I watched the police station shrink in the rearview mirror. You okay? She finally asked. I touched my throat where Ryan had tried to grab me at the gala, feeling only smooth skin. No bruises. No fear. No chains. I will be. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah, separation papers filed. Criminal charges pending. You're free. Free. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. I'd gotten my revenge, but somehow it felt less like victory and more like liberation. Like waking up from a long, dark dream into a morning full of possibilities. Take me to the boutique, I told Mia. I have a shift in an hour. She smiled, understanding. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. My beginning. Finally, gloriously mine. The last box from my old life sat on Jessica's desk at the boutique, filled with marketing proposals and campaign ideas. She studied them with growing excitement while I arranged a window display. These are brilliant, Anna. The digital integration, the brand positioning. She looked up. I'm not letting you stay part-time anymore. I need you running marketing for all 3 locations. Through the window, I watched Claire approach the store, hesitating at the entrance. Our first interaction since the gala. Since everything fell apart. Take your time, Jessica said, gathering the proposals. I'll be in the back. The bell chimed as Claire entered, clutching her designer purse like a shield. I brought this, she said, holding out a small envelope. It was in Ryan's study. I thought you should have it. Inside was a photograph from our wedding day. I was laughing at something, unaware of the camera. Ryan was watching me with what I'd once mistaken for love. He's accepting the plea deal, Claire continued. The board agreed not to press additional charges if he cooperates with the investigation. Is that why you're here? To plead his case one last time? She straightened, and for a moment I saw where Ryan got his pride. No. I'm here because I failed you. I saw what was happening and I chose to look away. It was easier to believe in the perfect life Ryan presented than to acknowledge the truth. It usually is. You could have destroyed him completely, she said quietly. The evidence you had, what he did to Marcus, you could have ensured he never recovered. I turned back to the window display, adjusting a silk scarf. That's what Ryan would have done. But I didn't want to become him. I just wanted to be free. And are you? Free? My reflection in the window caught my eye, shoulders straight, head high, no tension in my jaw. No fear. Getting there. Claire moved toward the door, then paused. The house, he signed it over to you. Part of the settlement. Sell it, I said. Give the money to Marcus's medical fund. I don't want anything from that life anymore. After she left, I found one last item at the bottom of the box, a handwritten note from Ryan from our first anniversary. To my perfect wife, it began. Thank you for becoming everything I needed you to be. I'd treasured those words once. Now they read like a confession. The bell chimed again. Mia entered, followed by Evelyn. An unlikely alliance forged in the wreckage of Ryan's manipulation. Ready for lunch? Mia asked. That new marketing firm is eager to meet you. Just need to finish this display. Evelyn touched a cashmere sweater, her fingers trembling slightly. The investigators called again. They need more testimony about the financial transfers. You don't have to do it alone, I told her. Sarah will be there. So will I. She nodded, something like hope flickering across her face. I placed the last item in the window, a delicate silver chain with a key pendant. Not quite broken, but transformed into something new. Something stronger. Perfect, Jessica called from across the store. Though I'd shifted slightly left. I smiled, leaving it exactly where it was. Some things didn't need to be perfect anymore. They just needed to be true. The wedding photo still lay on the counter. I picked it up one last time, studying the woman I'd been, so eager to please, to transform herself into someone else's ideal. Coming? Mia called from the door. I left the photo on Jessica's desk, next to my new business cards, Anna Mitchell, Marketing Director. The bell chimed as we stepped into the sunlight. Ahead lay lunch meetings and court dates, therapy sessions, and fresh starts. The path wasn't clear or certain, but it was mine. And this time I wouldn't let anyone else define who I was meant to be.